Fan games. These are some of the biggest labors of love that a person or a team could show any particular IP or franchise. But out of all the gaming icons that there have ever been, none of them come close to the insane amount of fan projects that have been created for Sonic the Hedgehog. From RPGs to classic recreations to even 3D experiences, Sonic has a near endless supply of fan games. But with such vastness and variety, it can be quite a challenge to find experiences that go above and beyond. So I had a bit of an idea. What if all these fan titles were compiled into one massive collection? Well, that's what today is all about. So sit back, relax, and get ready to spin dash, because today we're taking on a massive deep dive into the intense world of Sonic the Hedgehog's top fan games. And in order to achieve that, we're hopping into what I like to call the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. Alright, before we dive right into this, I need to establish a few things. First off, this video will be divided up by sections, with 4 different segments in total, and these fan games will have to meet certain criteria to be a part of each of these segments. Secondly, each segment is in no particular order, so we're not going from worst to best, just a general showcase of a bunch of games. And finally, and most importantly, it's very likely that there might be a fan game that you enjoyed that might not be on this list. That doesn't mean I don't think it's good, it most likely means I either couldn't fit into the video, or I didn't even know it existed, so please keep that in mind. But with all that finally laid out, let's not waste any more time and get into our first segment. Welcome to our very first segment of the video, the top 2D Sonic fan games. Now, every game in this segment will have to have 3 different things. First off, every game in this segment will have to be fully completed and or at least offer a very lengthy experience. Second off, the game has to play fairly well with refined physics and mechanics. Finally, the game has to look like it's of high quality, so it can't look like any old Flash game from the early 2000s or anything. So essentially, something akin to the official Sega games. So with all that in mind, let's hop over to our very first entry, that being Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit. Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit was a full-blown Sega Genesis style remake of Sonic Triple Trouble, an old Sega Game Gear game that released back in 1994. Now this old school Game Gear title was fairly good, and probably one of the best Game Gear Sonic games that we had up to this point. But Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit takes this game and dials it up to 1,000. Now this fan game has been created by Noah, who actually worked on it for the better part of 5 years, with the game finally releasing on August 2nd of 2022. Now, Triple Trouble 16-bit has a whole lot to offer. Not only can you play as Sonic and Tails, but you can also play as Knuckles, Fang, Metal Sonic, and now Amy Rose. Oh, and as far as the physics and the mechanics go for this fan game, they are on point with the original games. If anything, it feels like this game's feel and style was made by Sega themselves from the 90s. That's how good it is. The game also sports a bunch of remade and updated bosses, a grand total of about 9 stages, and surprisingly is extremely faithful to the original source material, but with plenty of quality of life updates and improvements. And of course, I can't forget the amazing soundtrack that Triple Trouble 16-bit has, and its re-renditions of the original Game Gear songs. Also, Super Sonic is in this as an unlockable once you get all the Chaos Emeralds, and there is still so much more that I haven't even talked about yet. Now, as far as the story goes, Sonic Trouble 16-bit pretty much follows the same beat-for-beat story elements as the original. However, Noah ended up going above and beyond and actually had an entire comic made that pretty much set up the events of Sonic Triple Trouble, which I think is absolutely awesome. And as far as the game itself, it takes place right after the events of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, with the very first stage actually being you facing off against the remnants of the Death Egg robot that was showcased in Sonic 3 and Knuckles' Doomsday Zone. Although the 16-bit remake does add a few additional elements into the story from the Game Gear original, suffice it to say, Sonic Triple Trouble is jam-packed with content and you'll have tons to do in this amazing title. Now, I do want to talk about the final boss for Triple Trouble for just a minute, so skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers, but holy crap! It gets revealed that Knuckles is actually Metal Sonic in disguise, and they actually have the real Knuckles trapped inside of Eggman's new Big Bad Fortress. Once you do go and save Knuckles, as well as stop Eggman in this final Big Bad Machine, Metal Sonic then swoops in out of nowhere and uses the Dark Chaos Emeralds to effectively turn himself into Dark Rocket Metal Sonic. And this then begins one of the coolest final bosses I have ever experienced. As you transform into Super Sonic, you'll be trying to make your way closer and closer to Metal Sonic, doing damage to him bit by bit. but the more damage you cause to him, the more he'll use the Dark Chaos Emeralds to transform his body into bigger and badder forms. And what's even cooler is that he goes from using his Rocket Metal form to using the scrapped Mecha Sonic design from Sonic X-Treme. And once you do even more damage, then he'll use the emeralds again to transform into an even bigger version. And it becomes this awesome fight, avoiding his attacks while doing damage bit by bit. And then it all comes together in this awesome climax, as Metal Sonic uses all the energy in the Dark Chaos Emeralds to do one big bad blast. But as Super Sonic, you push against it and you start spazzing the button, only to then just thrust that thing right back into him and just annihilate him. And this was such a hype final boss, like holy crap. For me, Sonic Triple 16-bit will forever and always be the Sonic 4 that we should have gotten. Not only is it an amazing experience and it feels one-to-one with the classic titles, but the quality here is absolutely unmatched, and this genuinely is one of the best games I have ever played. So for those reasons and many, many others is why, at least for me, Sonic Triple will always be one of the best experiences that's ever been made. Now, next up we have a bit of a double whammy. Sonic Classic 1 and its sequel, Sonic Classic 2. First, let's start things off by talking about the original Sonic Classic. This is a fan game being created by a user known as Hez, and it saw its latest release on July 7th of 2016. Now this game features the classic trio of characters all being playable, that being Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles of course. And the game also has a variety of unique and beautiful made levels, with a grand total of 7 being featured in the game. Now graphically speaking, Sonic Classic's sprite work and animations are a definite highlight, with the game looking just like the Genesis originals, and on top of that the game also features an array of amazing tracks, with every song featured in this fan game having that old school classic Sonic upbeat high energy feel. And when looking at the physics and controls, they're pretty much one for one with the Genesis originals, and all the characters feel great to play with. Now as far as the story is concerned, this game actually takes place after the events of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where after the events of that game, it turns out that the Death Egg actually crashed onto South Island, and now Dr. Eggman is setting out to try and get it back into the sky and put his plans back in motion. So it's your job to get to the Death Egg first and put a stop to his newest plan and destroy the Death Egg for good. In summary, the original Sonic Classic is a great time. It's a fun fan game with a lot to offer and a lot to play with. And if you're a fan of the original Genesis titles, you will love Sonic Classic. Now with all that said, we're not done just yet, because Hez made another game, like I already said at the start of this entry, being the sequel to Sonic Classic, known as Sonic Classic 2. This sequel title came out during the 2021 Sage Expo, and it pretty much just does everything that Sonic Classic did, but way better. Its gameplay and physics are spot on, and the music is really well done all throughout this title. And just like the original, the sprite work and animations are all really high quality and look fantastic. With a total of 10 unique zones, 4 playable characters being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Fang, new gameplay gimmicks, customizable shields, and much, much more, Sonic Classic 2 just has so much to offer. That's not even including all the amazing boss fights that are featured in the game, the fact you can collect all the Chaos Emeralds. I mean, my lord, this is a really jam-packed experience. In summary, these two fan games offer a whole bunch of content and are an amazing love letter to the original classic Sonic series. And if you're a fan of 2D Sonic, you'll for sure be a fan of Sonic Classic 1 and 2. Right then, our next team up to bat is one that a lot of Sonic Advance players will most likely love, that being Sonic FGX Ultimate. This title is meant to be a tribute as well as an upbringing to an older Sonic fan game known as Sonic FGX, which at the time was made by DeColdrick. But as far as Sonic FGX Ultimate is concerned, this game is perfect for advanced players. Now FGX Ultimate was created by Tvik, and not only does it add an entire array of characters like Sonic, Tails, and more, but it adds a variety of different stages to play through and bosses to encounter. And they're all pretty expansive with many different paths you can take. But to go along with this, every character has an array of different moves that they can use, and these moves can help you keep the flow of speed consistently. This game is meant to be replayed over and over again, allowing you to get faster and faster. It's like a Sonic Advance speedrunner's dream. And add icing on top of the cake, probably the biggest thing that this game has is online multiplayer. This means you have the ability to verse against other players or your friends and race each other in these awesome expansive stages. And with each stage having 2 acts and a boss fight, there's a lot to go through here. There's also some bonus content you can achieve, whether you're going through the arcade mode and or if you're trying to get the Chaos Emeralds to unlock Super Sonic. There's also a full-blown level up system, where every time you level up, you'll unlock more abilities and moves that will make you that much better in these stages. So if you're looking for the ultimate Sonic Advance multiplayer experience, or if you just want some more Sonic Advance in your life, or maybe have a game to play with friends, or if you want to have a bit of a speedrunning challenge or try and claim top on the leaderboards, then Sonic FGX Ultimate is the game for you. And I'm confident that you'll have a fantastic time. Okay, we're hopping back over to 2D titles now, and the next one up to bat is one of the most unique and jam-packed experiences out there. A title known as Sonic USB Online. Sonic USB Online is a game being created by Selfie and their team that pretty much is a Sonic CD style fan game that adds a whole bunch of stuff to do. Between having 36 different playable characters, yes, I said 36, 88 pets to collect, 7 different zones with a grand total of 20 acts, tons of different special stages and more, as well as an online version of Sonic ISO and the first 3 levels of Sonic 2 ISO, with both of these being shorter, smaller fan game experiences that pretty much act as an isometric 3D remake of Sonic 1 and 2 in the same style as the arcade release Sega Sonic. And to add on to this, the game feels fantastic to play, the effects and the graphics look amazing, the music and the sound effects are awesome, the stage variety and layouts are really well done with some of the most unique and interesting mechanics I've ever experienced. This title is just packed to the brim with stuff to do. I mean, this game even has a level maker, like how cool is that? And that's just one of the many other different modes to play in this game. And I'd also be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Sonic USB also has a variety of different Easter eggs to find. Between references to Star Fox as well as Uganda Knuckles, you'll find something here that'll probably give you a good chuckle, or at least something cool to find. With so much to do in Sonic USB Online, you'll be spending quite a bit of time here. It's a brilliant experience, and I'm more than positive that you'll enjoy your time with Sonic USB. So please, go show it the love that it definitely deserves, because the amount of work that they've put into this is just insane. Okay then, our next game up to bat is one that a lot of Advance and Sonic Rush players will probably love to death. And that game is Sonic Dimensions. Sonic Dimensions is a work-in-progress title being created by Phantom. But even if this is still a work in progress, there is so much packed into this game that on a blind run, you'll probably spend about 2 or more hours trying to collect and unlock everything. Now, first and foremost, this game is really well packed with a variety of levels to experience, with there being 7 main stages and 2 bonus stages to play through, with all of these zones being very expansive with many different paths you can take, along with unique gimmicks and ideas, but all of them have a great sense of speed. And to achieve this, Sonic and Shadow, the playable characters in this game, have a wide variety of different moves that they can use to maintain their speed, and you can unlock a lot of these moves at Tails' shop, meaning that you can actually create your own playstyle with your own set of abilities. You can't use them all at once, so you have to pick and choose on what playstyle you particularly want. Abilities can range anywhere from getting a better boost gauge, to attracting rings to you, to even unlocking extra shields that you can use on a moment's notice. The game really gives you a lot of options here, it's awesome. And another reason why this is so cool is that it actually adds a reason to collect rings, as they double as currency in this game. And you're gonna need quite a few in order to purchase everything at the shop. And even without all these extra abilities, the base moves of Sonic and Shadow are very versatile, with Sonic featuring a double jump, and Shadow featuring this awesome little chaos dash. And of course, both characters have the tried and true boost gauge. There's also achievements you can unlock by doing different challenges, whether it's completing a stage in a set time, or beating a certain number of enemies, or collecting a certain amount of rings. There's tons to unlock here. And on top of that, you can actually obtain the Chaos Emeralds by obtaining an S rank on every stage. And once you get all 7, you unlock the super forms for both Shadow and Sonic. And these super forms tear through these zones. But if you're really wanting to challenge yourself, you can go back through the stages again using the super forms to try and gain an X rank. And these ranks are really awesome to obtain, because it requires you not only having a really high score, but really pushing through the stage at max speed. So you're going to need to know these stages fairly well and the best paths to take. And once you get X rank on all 7 of these stages, you can unlock Hypersonic. And this guy is just, holy crap! Hypersonic is so satisfying to use, and is a great final reward for all your hard effort, and I love using him. And the crazy part is, that is not the only things you can unlock. Like I've already stated before, there are 2 additional stages you can play through. One of them being Jungle Joyride, which you can unlock by getting all of the red rings throughout the entire game. And on top of that, in the stage select, you can play through the Null Zone, which is effectively the hardest stage in the game, and it will really test your abilities. But man, is it exhilarating. Graphically speaking, this game looks absolutely phenomenal, with a beautiful UI, amazing effects, and the sprite work pretty much being straight from the advanced games, so it's obviously really good. And the music here is reuses from tracks featured throughout the Sonic franchise. So of course, the music is also really good. Just all in all, Sonic Dimensions is a marvelous experience. And to be completely honest, when I was getting footage for this game, I just kept coming back again and again and again. I couldn't stop playing. I wanted to get better. I wanted to get faster. I wanted to get that elusive X rank. This game is just so fun. The flow is fantastic. I love Sonic Dimensions. It is so awesome. And the fact that we have more content on the way and this game is still very much alive in development makes me that much more excited to see the future of this title. So if you're a fan of boost gameplay and action-packed stages, then I am more than certain that you will fall in love with Sonic Dimensions. Alrighty, our next entry in this list is one that's actually a remake of an old Genesis game, that being Sonic 3D in 2D. Sonic 3D in 2D is a full-blown 2D remake of Sonic 3D Blast, an old Sega Genesis game that saw release on November 5th of 1996. Now for context, Sonic 3D Blast featured our blue boy running around in these pseudo-like 3D levels, exploring all around collecting flickies to advance through each area. But after this game launched over the years, some fans wondered what this game would have been like in 2D. Well, we actually would end up getting that question answered in Sonic 3D in 2D. This fan game was created by SONIC'S, and it saw its latest update on March 10th of 2022. This entire title pretty much reimagines the plot, level design, characters, and more in a full-blown, well, 2D experience. The game features 8 zones with 15 acts to explore, 15 unique boss battles to engage with, several playable characters like Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, but additional ones like Shadow, Buckles, and Ashura. It also features the elemental shields found in the original 2D Sonic games, as well as including the original golden shield found in 3D Blast, which gives Sonic the homing attack. Now, Sonic 3D and 2D pretty much plays and feels like the original Genesis games, same physics and all, and graphically speaking, this game looks very well made. It looks just like the way I would imagine Sonic 3D Blast looking like in a 2D style, and as a whole, Sonic 3D and 2D stays very faithful to recreating 3D Blast into the original Genesis 2D style. Now, aside from all that, the game also features a slew of bonus content. Like I've already mentioned, there are several additional characters you can play as and unlock, but there's also tons of Easter eggs, unlockable extras, and achievements, which adds a good amount more to do in Sonic 3D and 2D. And as far as the music goes, well, you can actually choose between either the Genesis or the Sega Saturn OST, so obviously they're all bangers, as to be expected. And as far as the layouts of the levels are concerned, these areas are very, very large and vast. There's a lot to explore and do in these zones. You might end up getting lost from time to time, but if you do explore, you're normally rewarded for that exploration. The boss fights have also been completely reimagined in a new 2D perspective, with a bunch of additional bosses added into the mix. However, these guys can be quite challenging, so you definitely need to bring your A game when facing off against them. There's also special stages that you can access, which will grant you the chance at snagging a Chaos Emerald, and once you get all 7, you'll achieve the ability to go Super Sonic. And the special stages are also a whole lot more difficult in this version than the previous mainline releases of 3D Blast. But in summary, Sonic 3D and 2D is packed with content. It's an awesome and yet challenging experience that will definitely put your skills to the test. And it's a really cool look at what Sonic 3D Blast could have been like if it was made in a traditional 2D style. So if you're a fan of 3D Blast, or want a really beefy 2D Sonic game to get into, or one that will definitely challenge you, then Sonic 3D and 2D is definitely worth the look. Well, if you're a fan of fighting games as well as games like Sonic Battle or Sonic the Fighters, then this fan game will be right up your alley. The fan game in question? Sonic Battle Rematch. Sonic Battle Rematch is a fan game being created by a user known as, and I'm super sorry, I'm probably going to butcher your name, Luigi Monsor 64. And it features our Blue Boy Sonic as well as a massive array of other characters fighting each other in 2D style levels. Now, this game was created using the Mugen engine, and it features a grand total of 22 characters and 47 stages with remixed songs. Each character has an array of different moves and combos you can use, as well as different specials that have very bombastic and flashy effects. And on top of this, each character feels vastly different from one another, so there should always be one that will fit your general playstyle. There's also an array of different modes, as well as options that can tailor-make your experience to the way you want. And with all the different combos and abilities you can use, Sonic Battle Rematch offers a pretty wide skill ceiling for an array of different characters. On top of all this, there are also some more unique characters that have been added into this game, like Fleetway Supersonic, Shattuck, Dark Sonic, and even Hypersonic as his own character. You also have the ability to transform into super abilities, depending on the character you're using, which means you can use characters like Supersonic, Hypersonic, Super Shadow, Super Silver, the list goes on and on. Sonic Battle Rematch just offers a massive variety of content and characters to play with, and when facing off against friends, you can have an absolute blast. And with how intense and crazy these fights can get, you'll really have to bring your A game if you want to perform well. The only real quote-unquote issue with Sonic Battle is that there are some extremely overpowered characters in this game. Some of the best examples of this are characters like Shattuck as well as Mephiles, both of which are extremely OP and are destructive characters to fight against. And other characters are just really bad matchups or aren't very well equipped to facing off against others. So there's a tad bit of a balancing issue. But honestly, if you really know what you're doing and have the skill to back up your plays, you can have some intense battles against these characters. And there are a few more minor problems, like the fact that the UI can be a little buggy sometimes with the character portraits not displaying proper, as well as the character portraits in general being just a tad jagged. You also might run into the occasional glitch with all the crazy stuff that's happening, and the actual character difficulty setting doesn't seem to quite work. But honestly, these minor inconveniences don't really matter all that much when the game already has so many good things going for it. As a whole, Sonic Battle Rematch is a great experience, and with such a wide variety of character combinations and matches, as well as the amount of modes that this game offers and the ability to play against your friends, you'll have a lot to do in Sonic Battle Rematch. So if you're looking for a pretty intense fighting game for Sonic, or want to see some of the craziest matchups in history like Hypersonic versus Hyper Shattuck, then Sonic Battle Rematch is the game for you. Alright, if you're a fan of Sonic Colors or Sonic Advance, then this next game is just for you. Sonic Colors Demastered. This is a title being created by Random City Gaming, and it saw its latest release in Sage of 2023, and it pretty much reimagines the Sonic Colors experience, while pulling elements between the Wii and the DS release. Between having a far better and more in-depth story, more consistent and flowing gameplay, beautiful tile sets, and it's the perfect showcase for what Sonic Colors could have been if it was released on something like the GBA. Now the game is still being worked on and is not fully finished just yet, but the amount of playtime that can be found here is honestly very surprising. Between all the levels you can play through, the story that it presents, as well as some of the secrets that you can find, like collecting the red star rings and unlocking Supersonic, you'll have a lot to do in Sonic Colors Demastered. Now, as far as physics and controls are concerned, this game will play very similar to the Sonic Advance titles and Sonic Rush. That's not even mentioning the fact that you can equip additional skills onto Sonic to fit your playstyle. There's also a ranking system, and depending how good you are in these stages, will determine how good of a rank you achieve. There's also the added mechanic of the Wisps that aren't in Sonic Colors Demastered, and each of them pretty much work the same way as they did in the original Wii and DS versions. Honestly, if development keeps continuing the way it has, and with all these amazing updates that we've been getting, aside from Sonic Colors DS, this might very well be one of the definitive ways to play Sonic Colors, since it pretty much brings together the best attributes from the Wii version and the DS version into one full-blown package. So if you haven't played Sonic Colors yet, or if you're a fan of the Advance series or the Rush series, or you prefer the Sonic Colors version on DS, then Sonic Colors Demastered is the game for you. And I'm certain that you're going to love every moment that you play Sonic Colors Demastered. Well everyone, we have another fighting game up to bat, and it's one of my personal favorites. That being Sonic the Fighters Blitz Hyper Edition. This game is a continuation of the original fan game Sonic the Fighters Blitz, created by Restless Dipstick. And both fan games sought to completely remake the original Sonic the Fighters into a 2D fighting game. This title adds an array of different modes to play and a variety of characters to use, and it also features a complete re-rendition of the original arcade story mode found in Sonic the Fighters. Each character has a variety of moves and specials that you can use in order to take on your opponents, and each character is built with a different playstyle in mind. They also translated every major stage in Sonic the Fighters into a new 2D experience, while also adding a new level to play through as well. And as far as fighting games go, Sonic the Fighters Blitz Hyper Edition feels amazing to play, and pulling off combos feels smooth and slick. The game's soundtrack and sound effects are literally from Sonic the Fighter, so they're obviously fantastic, and the general art style and graphic look of this game is really unique and one of a kind, which really helps establish the unique identity that Sonic the Fighter's Blitz has. This game also features multiplayer, allowing you to verse off against friends, and you can obviously verse against CPUs. And the best part is that Blitz League, the people that are behind the Hyper Edition of Sonic the Fighter's Blitz, have more content planned in the future, which is insane because as it stands, this is pretty much already a full finished experience, with a full arcade and story mode to play through and a variety of different characters to use. And in general, this is probably the best 2D remake we could have ever gotten for Sonic the Fighters. It not only respects the original source material, but it adds so much more to the experience, making this an absolute blast to play through. So in short, if you're a fan of Sonic the Fighters, or a fan of 2D fighting games in general, then Sonic the Fighters Blitz Hyper Edition will be a game that you will fall in love with for sure. And with more content on the way, the future for Sonic the Fighters Blitz Hyper Edition looks very, very bright, and I cannot wait to see what comes next. Well everyone, we're nearing the end of the 2D section of this video. And the first one up to bat is a game known by many and one that's been in development since the early 2000s. That being Sonic XG. Sonic XG was a game that was being created by, and I'm sorry I'm going to butcher y'all's names, Sir Ian and Nightmare, and has gone through many different variations during all these years. The actual story and development behind Sonic XG is extremely vast and in-depth, so we're not going to focus too hard on its development. But as far as story is concerned, this game was set to take after the events of Sonic and Knuckles, where Sonic falls from the atmosphere and lands a tornado carrying the Master Emerald. But they're shot down by none other than Metal Sonic, who then ends up swiping the Master Emerald and flies off. And now it's our mission to get the Master Emerald back, as well as stop whatever evil plan has been set in motion. The setup here is simple and easy to understand, and it fits pretty in line with the original Sonic the Hedgehog series. But that's not all that fits. With the ability to play with 3 different characters, being Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, each of them feel great and just like the way they did in the original Genesis classics. And on top of this game playing and feeling like the old school classics, it's also packed to the brim with a variety of different zones to play through, all with their own unique boss fights to encounter and beautiful tile sets to experience. Not to mention that the music and the sound effects are extremely well done, and the backgrounds that is showcased here are phenomenal. And with so many different levels to experience, this game's length rivals that of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, so there's a whole lot to do. There's also a brand new set of special stages to experience, where you're swapping between 2 different lanes, one above you and one below, while avoiding different obstacles trying to collect the Chaos Emeralds towards the end. Now I do want to talk about the final boss for just a moment, so skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers, but whoa, it's really cool. So the way the final boss works for Sonic XG is that you actually fight it twice. The first time you face off against the big bad is in Furious Finale 1, where you're fighting as just normal Super Sonic, chasing him down and hitting his ship bit by bit. And when you finally deal enough damage throughout the entire fight, the Mad Doctor explodes to a bunch of pieces, the Master Emerald falls, and Super Sonic flies down to assumingly catch it. But then the game ends, and you're told to go to Cosmic Chasm to try again. When going to the Cosmic Chasm stage, you can find an emerald that will send you back to the boss fight again. But this time, you're fighting along with your past self. So now you have 2 Super Sonics flying together in the true final boss, where the Mad Doctor will be shooting missiles at you while you use your past self to launch an attack at him all throughout. And this is just a really unique boss fight. Using your past self from the previous fight you just did to work together and beat the Doctor? Really well done and very unique. And as the game ends, your past self goes and saves Tails, where your future self then grabs Tails from your past self, and then the game abruptly ends. Yeah, Sonic XG does have a really oddly abrupt ending. Once you do face off against the true final fight and save Tails, the game literally just ends and it says you're too cool, which it's a little abrupt, but okay. It actually turns out that this pretty much completed version of Sonic XG actually ended up getting leaked and wasn't truly meant to be released, which is pretty interesting. But even if that's the case, what's really astonishing is that as the game is right now, it is totally able to rival the official titles. And there's so much jam-packed here, the quality, it is just, wow, it is really phenomenal. And if you haven't taken the time yet to play or experience Sonic XG, or if this is a fan game you've never heard about, then you definitely need to take the time to play through it. Because trust me, this fan game is one of a kind. Okay everyone, our next entry into this list is another double whammy. That being Sonic before and after the sequel. These two fan games were both created by the same user known as Lake Peppered, and both of these titles aim to tell the story in between Sonic's classic games, with Sonic before the sequel being set in between Sonic 1 and 2, and Sonic after the sequel being set in between Sonic 2 and 3. With that said, let's begin by looking at the oldest release out of the lineup, that obviously being Sonic before the sequel. This title released on August 5th of 2012, and it focused a lot on the classic duo, Sonic and Tails, and their very first adventure together, as well as showcasing the original launch of the Death Egg. And to help tell that story, the game sports a plethora of custom cutscenes, and for a fan game from 2012, these look amazing. On top of that, visually speaking, Sonic before the sequel, or Sonic BTS, is a feast for the eyes. With the amazing use of vibrant colors, beautiful and lively backgrounds, detailed sprite work, it all just comes together here in BTS. And it honestly is amazing how well this still holds up after all this time. And gameplay is another aspect that holds up surprisingly well. Not only does Sonic and Tails feel great to use, but the stages are all super well crafted, with a variety of different paths you can take and gimmicks you can experience. And there's such a wide variety here, every stage just has its own identity. And it also helps that the music that goes along with these stages all sound great and really drive home that identity for each stage. There are also a slew of creative bosses you can come up against that all provide you with a fair challenge. And there are even special stages you can take on in order to obtain the Chaos Emeralds and get the true ending. And speaking of true endings, I'm actually going to talk about the ending and the final boss here for just a moment, so skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers. But anyways, the game ends with an amazing climax where Sonic actually takes on the beta version of the Death Egg robot, all while the Death Egg flies off in the background. And as the fight continues, if you get all the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic can turn into Super Sonic for the first time and bashes off the Doc's mech in the final showdown. And it's awesome! The fight overall was a really great challenge, and it's really cool to see Eggman slowly create his big bad mech and seeing the original beta design for it. It's just such as a cool detail. And after the fight ends, the emeralds actually fly off, and Sonic is back to his base form once again. And the game ends with Sonic and Tails landing in Emerald Hill, which then leads into Sonic 2. And that is just so cool. As a total package, this game is beefy, with a total runtime of the game being close to about 2 hours and 12 different zones to run through, with each of them mostly having 3 acts each. You'll be spending quite some time in Sonic BTS. And though this game has got some age behind it, there are several fan remasters like Sonic BTS Plus that help bring this amazing fan game up to modern standards. But even if you don't play the fan remasterings, even the original is still a blast to play. This game is just so well made. Now, with all that said, we ain't done just yet, cause like I already mentioned, Lake actually made a sequel to his fan game called Sonic After the Sequel, or Sonic ATS. This title originally released in 2013, but would later receive a DX version from the original creator in 2017. And this title mainly focuses on the events between the second and third classic Sonic games, where Sonic and Tails come across a mysterious island with some strange metal ring around it, which of course turns out to be the Doctor up to his old tricks again. And just like BTS, this game features a bunch of in-game cutscenes to help tell the story, but this time all of them have even better animations than the previous title. Visually, ATS is breathtaking, just as good if not better than BTS, with it having an array of amazing backgrounds, sprites, transitions, and animations. And the music is also another major highlight, just like the original BTS. Now gameplay-wise, this title feels fantastic. Not only does Sonic and Tails feel just as good to play with as they did in BTS and the Genesis originals, but all the stages are very well constructed, with a variety of paths you can take and gimmicks to experience, just like BTS. The game also features an array of unique boss fights with creative attacks to take on, and with a grand total of 10 acts to run through, this fan game is just about as long of a runtime as its sibling title, so you'll have a lot to play through. Now, just like I did for BTS, I do want to talk about the final boss and the ending for just a minute here, so skip ahead if you don't want to get any spoilers. With that said though, oh my god, this fight is awesome! Towards the end of the game, Sonic and Tails end up coming across Eggman's newest and baddest spot, this strange, large owl-like mecha. This thing tries to swipe the emeralds from Sonic and Tails, but as it attempts this, Sonic uses the power of the Chaos Emeralds to transform into Super Sonic. And once this happens, the owl mecha zips off towards Angel Island with Super Sonic in hot pursuit. This then begins the first phase of the fight, where you and the mecha will be facing off with Angel Island in the background as a beautiful set piece. You'll have to avoid its attacks, all while managing your ring count and dealing damage to him over time. But once enough damage is dealt, he'll then shoot off and fly underneath Angel Island, and you'll try and chase him down. you'll end up flying through a collage of warp rings, and eventually Supersonic and the Owl Mech will end up going through one of them, and this then begins the second phase, where you'll actually have to avoid the Mecha Owl's attacks and deal damage to it as you progress through the stage. But you better be careful, because this stage is fairly tricky, and with Supersonic's high speed, you can end up running into spikes and getting damaged. But once you do land the final hit on the Owl Mech, you'll finally get to the last phase of the final boss, where Eggman ends up taking matters into his own hands and actually uses the power of the Chaos Symbols for himself, becoming, and I kid you not, Super Eggman. And he is not playing around. Not only is he super buff, but he effectively just became a Super Saiyan, and he'll do an array of attacks that you'll have to avoid. And on top of all that, he also has an insane health pool, so you'll have to whittle it down bit by bit. And this fight as a whole is just insane. Between the cinematic music, the amazing background, and the fact that you are literally fighting Eggman mano a mano while you are both in super forms is just wild. But once you deal enough damage, Eggman will finally be defeated and you'll fly out of the special zone to meet up with Tails. But in the background, you can already see Eggman's newest plan has begun, as Angel Island starts to fall into the ocean. This then leads Supersonic and Tails to head off to Angel Island, and so Sonic After the Sequel ends, where Sonic 3 and Knuckles begins. And if I'm being honest, this final boss in the ending, it's just fantastic. In summary, both these fan games have so much to offer, and they both still hold up surprisingly well after all this time. And between the beautiful graphics, fun gameplay, and cute cutscenes, there are so many reasons to love Sonic BTS and ATS. And on a bit of a personal note, both of these games hold a bit of a special place in my heart. These are some of the very first Sonic fan games I ever saw, and as a kid growing up, these were the games that inspired me to learn more about the Sonic fan community. And after all the time that's passed, with all the additional fan games that have come out over the years, these are still some of the most top-tier Sonic fan games out there. So if you're wanting to take a dive into two classic Sonic-style experiences that fit perfectly between the Sega official titles, and offer a whole bunch to do, then I can't recommend Sonic Before and After the Sequel enough, because both of these games are just marvelous to play through. Alright everyone, our next game is actually another title made by Lake Fepard. But unlike his previous works that mainly focus on traditional 2D Sonic games, this one right here is actually a full-blown open world / Metroidvania style game, titled Sonic Chrono Adventure. Sonic Chrono Adventure takes place after Sonic ATS and Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where our blue blur finally gets himself some downtime after all the crazy adventures he's had up to this point. However, Sonic's vacay quickly goes down the drain as the big bad final boss from Sonic ATS, spoiler warning, ends up making a return to relentlessly hunt down the Hedgehog. And now this big bad bot has the added ability of time travel, and using these new abilities, he thrusts Sonic centuries back into the past. And this is where our new adventure takes place. The setup here for Chrono Adventure is really awesome, and the story is far more in-depth than anything we've experienced up to this point. And it makes sense because this game is extremely in-depth overall. Not only will you be traveling back and forth through time, but this is pretty much a Metroidvania, but for a Sonic game. You'll be traveling all over the place, taking on baddies, getting new abilities, and traversing back to previous areas to progress further in the game. Sonic plays and controls just like how he did in BTS and ATS, however now he has a slew of new abilities, like being able to use a sword, jet boots, bumper gloves, and boost shoes. And there's still other power-ups I haven't even mentioned, as well as getting a unique super form towards endgame. The game also looks just as good as BTS and ATS, with unique locales that all have their very own identity. And as a whole, the best way to describe Sonic Chrono Adventure is pretty much a Sonic Metroid game, and it's done extremely well. Though unlike Lake's previous works, Sonic BTS and ATS, Sonic Chrono Adventure doesn't have an original soundtrack, as songs are borrowed from several games, including Before and After the Sequel, Kingdom Hearts, and a few others. So you might end up recognizing a good handful of these tracks as you play through your adventure, but most of them are reused to great effect and fit their areas perfectly. And on top of this, just like Lake's previous works, this game does have in-game cutscenes. But unlike BTS and ATS, this game has a whole lot more of them, mainly since the story is far more involved. And if I'm being completely honest here, I'm barely scratching the surface of Sonic Chrono Adventure. I mean, the average playtime for someone that doesn't know what they're doing can range anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. In short, Sonic Chrono Adventure has to be one of the most extensive fan games I have ever seen. And if you're a fan of open world Sonic games or Metroidvanias, or you want to see those two games combined into one, then you definitely need to give Sonic Chrono Adventure a try. And even though this game might have some age behind it, since it did release all the way back in 2013, it still more than holds up today, and is easily one of the most extraordinary fan games that's ever been made. Well, we finally made it to one of the most requested Sonic fan games that people have asked me to check out, and I'm finally doing it. And for those that don't know, I'm talking about a game known as Sonic Time Twisted. This is a game that was being headed by Overbound, and was pretty much trying to improve on the best features and elements found in Sonic CD and the other Genesis and Mega Drive games. And this game has actually been in development since 2005. With the game fully releasing in 2017, and the latest version, 1.1.2, seeing release on March of 2022. Now, if you haven't already figured it out, you're going to be spending a lot of time in this game, because there's an insane amount to do. In order to achieve the true ending, you have to collect all the time stones and all the Chaos Emeralds, making a grand total of 14 special stages. In order to achieve this, Sonic has to travel into the past of every stage in order to find and get access to the special stage to collect the time stone in that area. But then he also has to travel to the future in order to find the special stage in that time zone to get a Chaos Emerald. With 8 zones, 2 acts apiece, and bosses to encounter, this is going to be a beefy 2D Sonic game for you to take on. Now, as far as the storyline goes, this game takes place in an alternative timeline to where after the destruction of the Death Egg, Dr. Robotnik actually perishes. And now Metal Sonic returns to Little Planet in order to resurrect his creator, using ancient alien technology. And now it's your mission as the player to put a stop to Metal Sonic's plans before he can resurrect Dr. Eggman. The story is definitely very unique and a very different take on most Sonic fan games, especially with the whole idea of Dr. Eggman actually being dead and Metal Sonic trying to resurrect him. But to add on to the uniqueness of the story, the game itself, the way it's designed and its style, is also extremely unique. Every stage has a vastly different identity, with great music that makes every stage feel unique in its own right. And the stage's layout and design is very wide, which pretty much kind of encourages exploration, similar to Sonic CD. And the bosses are all wildly different with their own array of attacks. And what's even cooler is that one of these bosses is actually a reference to Sonic the Comic, which is pretty dang cool. And the only odd thing about Sonic Time Twisted, the only thing I can really think of, and I'm not going to show here obviously because of spoiler reasons, is the ending is actually pretty gruesome, even for a fan game. But even with that, this is still one of the most intense and jam-packed Sonic fan games out there to date, and one that you'll be spending an unparalleled amount of time with in order to beat. So if you're looking for a rather unique and more intensive 2D Sonic game to play through, then this is the game for you. And what's even better is that Sonic Time Twisted is still being worked on today, with a 2.0 version currently being in development. And for any of you that are willing to give Sonic Time Twisted a try, you'll be in for an unforgettable experience, guaranteed. And now we are finally at the last entry for the top 2D Sonic fan games. And this is a game that I hold very near and dear to my heart, and it's one of my favorite Sonic experiences of all time. Heck, one of my favorite games of all time. That being Sonic and the Fallen Star. Sonic and the Fallen Star, one of the most unique and beautiful looking 2D Sonic games that has ever been made. This game was created by Stardrop and saw release in July of 2022. Now, as far as story is concerned, Sonic and the Fallen Star is pretty straightforward. Sonic and Tails are traveling to Starfall Island, and while they're there, they notice that Eggman is trying to get his holds on some kind of mythic star that has fallen from the sky. However, the star ends up getting broken into multiple pieces, and now it's your job to go and hunt down these pieces and get them before Eggman does, and uses them to power up his newest and biggest baddest machine. The story is very charming and fairly cute, and there are custom cutscenes in the game for stage transitions, and they're all very well done. But aside from the story, as far as the gameplay is concerned, holy crap! Sonic has never felt so amazing before. He's fast and has the ability to use drop dash, spin dash, as well as an array of different elemental shields that always keep the action going. The stage layouts themselves are very wide and open ranged, allowing for many different paths to take that most of the time help you keep your speed all throughout the levels. As far as the soundtrack goes, it's just a banger after a banger, probably one of the greatest fan Sonic soundtracks I've ever heard. And honestly, this soundtrack for Fallen Star is probably some of the best in all of Sonic media. The game's art style and graphical design is just breathtaking. Every stage feels like it's alive and colorful, and each of them have their very own unique identity. And the bosses that are accompanied with these stages are also a blast to play against, and are all very unique between each of them. You also have an additional character to play as in this game, that being Tails. He feels just as good as any other game with the ability to fly all over the place. And he's definitely great for either newer players or players that want to do a little more exploring. You can also access special stages by finding warp rings that are hidden throughout all the levels. And once you do finally find one of these warp rings, you'll be launched into the special stage where you're running down a massive raceway while collecting blue spheres to increase your speed while you try and reach to the end to grab the Chaos Emerald before time runs out. And these special stages are awesome. They can get a little more challenging towards the end, but these are a blast to play through and offer a great little challenge. And these are probably my favorite set of special stages out of all of Sonic media. And of course, once you do collect all the Chaos Emeralds, you'll get Super Sonic, who, of course, feels amazing to play and shreds through all of the stages. Now, I am going to talk about the final boss for just a moment here in the ending of the game, so skip ahead if you don't want to get spoiled. But holy crap, the final boss is amazing! Once you do finally reach the end of the game and play through what I would consider to be one of the best and most fun final stages ever, you face off against the big bad Dr. Eggman himself as he pilots a battle mech. Once you face off against him in this awesome one-on-one, towards the end of the game, if you collected all 7 of the Chaos Emeralds, you will unlock a brand new form. Just as Eggman's about to win, the memories that Sonic has created with Tails starts rushing back to him. So in a final effort to save himself and his best buddy Tails, Sonic calls upon the power of the Chaos Emeralds and the Mythic Star, which at this point has been fully fixed. And he turns into one of the most badass forms of all time, Nova Sonic, who is like Hypersonic on freaking steroids. Nova Sonic is a blazing white cosmic powerhouse, and you use this brand new amazing form to face off against Eggman and his final big bad mech. And this fight is awesome! It might not be the hardest thing in the world, but it's definitely an absolute spectacle. And the music in the set piece just, wow! It is such a beautiful final capping point for Sonic and the Fallen Star. As a whole, Sonic and the Fallen Star is an amazing experience. It feels great, it looks great, it plays great, it sounds great. And if you have not played Sonic and the Fallen Star, you owe it to yourself to play one of the best Sonic fan games of all time. And if you have already played it, well, go play it again! For me personally, Sonic and the Fallen Star will always be one of my top picks for Sonic fan games. A game that I will always come back to time and time again. And on a bit of a side note, I count Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit as Sonic 4. And Sonic and the Fallen Star, at least to me, is Sonic 5. Now I know that sentiment might not be shared around with too many people, but for me, this is Sonic 5, the game that I would have always wanted to play on official Sega hardware. The game that I would imagine that could have released on something like the Sega Saturn or the Dreamcast as a full-fledged 2D Sonic experience. It is just that good. And that finally brings us to the end of the top 2D Sonic fan games. So with all that said, let's move on to our next section. Alright, our next segment up is the top 3D Sonic fan games. And just like the previous segment, every game in this list will have to meet certain criteria. In fact, they'll actually have to meet the same criteria as the top 2D Sonic fan games. So, with all that said, let's move on to our very first entry. Sonic Encore. Sonic Encore was created by a user known as Lord Jimt, and it saw its final build release on July 22nd of 2023. Now, Sonic Encore, in my opinion, is probably one of the best 3D Sonic fan games out there to date. It pretty much reimagines a ton of the original classic Sonic levels all throughout Sonic's career, with a grand total of 6 reimagined zones. These stages are huge and allow for tons of different areas to explore and traverse. With Sonic's newfound momentum and abilities, he can blaze through these stages no problem. And with how the stages are designed, you can really maintain some awesome speed if you know what to expect, or if at least you have some good reaction time. But that's not the only thing that Sonic Encore presents to us, because we also have a slew of characters to play as, each with their own unique abilities and attributes. For example, you have characters like Knuckles, Tails, Shadow, Blaze, Mighty, Ray. There is just a huge variety here. All these characters feel amazing to play with, and no matter which character you pick, you'll be able to run through these stages no problem. There's also fully reimagined boss fights, taking the original 2D fights and translating them into these awesome 3D arenas. Sonic Encore's music is also extremely well done, as all of them are remixes of the original themes found in the levels that have been reimagined in Sonic Encore. Being able to see these classic zones reimagined in this beautiful momentum-based 3D environment is amazing. And to be honest, the fact that Sega hasn't made a game like Sonic Encore yet is shocking, because this game proves how amazing the momentum-based formula can be, especially when utilized properly with great level design. So if you're looking for probably one of the best 3D Sonic experiences you'll ever play through, or if you're a fan of momentum-paced gameplay in a 3D environment, then Sonic Encore will be the game for you, and you're gonna have a fantastic time for sure. Alright, next up we have a game that fairly recently just came out, and has been in the works for several years. Sonic Forces Overclocked. Now I know what you're gonna say, wait a minute, this isn't a fan game, it's a mod. Bro, just shush, I don't care, it's being included here. Sonic Forces Overclocked is one of the best modded experiences I have ever played, and pretty much fully redoes Sonic Forces in the best way possible. Not only that, but it has custom cutscenes, voice acting, better physics. I mean, Sonic Forces Overclocked is its own entire experience, so it deserves to be on this list for sure. With that said, Sonic Forces Overclocked was a fantastic mod that was in development for just about 5 years. This mod was created by the Overclock team, and they poured their heart and soul into this project. Now this game takes place 2 months after the events of Sonic Forces, where Eggman has already been defeated, and he sends out Metal Sonic to retrieve the Phantom Ruby that was left after the battle. However, once Metal Sonic does come across the Phantom Ruby, it actually short-circuits his programming, giving him free will once again, and he breaks away from his doctor's control and hunts down Infinite. They then overclock the Phantom Ruby and set out to completely destroy the Resistance, and this then kicks off Sonic Forces Overclocked. The story already is just way better, and the voice acting and custom cutscenes that are here are just outstanding. And on a personal note, the portrayal of Neo Metal Sonic in Overclocked is probably my favorite portrayal of Neo Metal in any version of Sonic media. But what about the level design and music? Oh, well, they've been overhauled. Not only are the stages revamped and far more in depth than ever before, with many different paths you can take, but all of them offer a serious challenge. Not only that, but Sonic's controls and physics, as well as the avatars, have all been tweaked to feel that much better and more controllable. The music is also absolutely top notch, and graphically, this game looks just as good, if not better, than the original. Now, when compared to Sonic Forces, the difficulty here is a little higher than the original, but honestly, it's a far more refreshing experience than the original game was. Also, this mod gives you the added benefit of giving the avatar an array of different whip spins at the very start, meaning that you can make the avatar play and control the way you want. They also worked in an extra level into the game called Episode Metal, which is a fully playable prequel stage to the events of Sonic Forces Overclocked, where you actually get to play as Metal Sonic. Oh, and before we move on, I do want to talk about the final boss for like 2 seconds, so skip ahead if you don't want to get spoiled, but the final boss is awesome. Not only are you facing against Infinite and Metal Sonic at the same time in this awesome raceway, but the stage is constantly shifting, meaning that you'll go through different themes that represent the areas you've already ran through in the game. The music here is a complete banger, and the banter between Sonic and the main bad guys is spot on. And being able to finally land that last blow towards the very end, double boosting with the avatar, facing one-on-one with Infinite and Metal, dang, this is awesome! A way better final boss fight than what we got in Sonic Forces, that's for sure. This might not be the longest experience in the world, with there only being about a grand total of 9 stages, but it is still an experience that will leave you with a far bigger impact than the original Sonic Forces. And honestly, the only reason to buy Sonic Forces nowadays is to play Sonic Forces Overclocked. That's just the truth. It's that good. So if you're wanting to play the pretty much definitive Sonic Forces experience, as well as see the insane amount of talent that the Overclock team has, then for the love of blue hedgehogs, please go check out Sonic Forces Overclocked. You will not be disappointed. This is truly a one-of-a-kind experience. Alright, we're going to take a step away from traditional 3D Sonic games and instead look at a 3D Sonic fighting game known as Sonic Smackdown. Now, yeah, this is on a 2D plane, it's not truly a real 3D game, but it's got 3D models and it's my list, so I'm going to count it here anyway, so deal with it. Sonic Smackdown was created by Arc Forged, and it saw its latest release on July 22nd of 2022. And features an array of different content to experience. First and foremost, we have a variety of different characters. Everything from Sonic to Shadow to Knuckles to Tails, and even some really cool characters like freaking Mecha Sonic. On top of all this, every character has their own unique movesets, combos, and specials that can be utilized in any kind of fighting scenario. You can pull off some really insane combos and really flashy moves the better you get. And because of all the different characters and combos to learn, this game leaves a lot of room for the player to improve their skill and get better the more they practice. Also, Sonic SmackDown does have a very intriguing system to where once you do damage to a player, you can collect rings to refill your own health gauge, which is a really cool way of incorporating the ring mechanic found in traditional Sonic games. And with all the striking combos you can use and the insane specials at your disposal, this game is a very sporadic and intense experience, and it's awesome! The game also has an assortment of different level things that you can experience for your battles, and all of them are based on stages and areas found in the Sonic franchise. You also have different modes that you can experience, like an arcade mode, where you have to take on a character after character to beat them all in a big tournament. As far as Sonic fighting fan games go, Sonic SmackDown is probably one of the best games you can get into. It's just as good as Sonic the Fighter's Blitz, and it's so fun. The control and the physics of the characters are also really spot on, and they all have really good weights, making every hit that you land feel impactful. And to be completely honest, Sonic SmackDown is so good, I really do believe this game could be played competitively if there were people that wanted to do that. So if you're looking to play one of the most intensive and well-designed Sonic fighting fan games, then Sonic SmackDown is the perfect title to jump into. And I can't wait to see what other future releases that Art Force has planned. Because if Sonic SmackDown is this good, then I can only imagine how amazing their next title will be. Oh boy everyone, this next entry has quite the reputation. That being Sonic Omens. Alright, I hate that I have to do this, but right here and now, I need to set the record straight. I am not going to be focusing on any of the controversy that surrounded this game. I am not versed into the subject, nor do I have all the facts to be able to make an opinion or a statement on the matter. So with that said, we're purely going to be focusing on the game itself, especially since there were people on the Sonic Omens project that obviously poured their heart and souls into it. So with that said, let's get to the game. This title was being developed by Ouroboros Studios, and it saw its full release on August 10th of 2022. And the goal of Sonic Omens was to explain why the Chaos Emeralds were no longer used in modern Sonic games. Or at least it tried to until Sonic Frontiers came out. It pulled a lot of story elements throughout the Sonic franchise, including games like Sonic Unleashed, but it also pulled things from the Sonic X anime. Now, if you're not into the Sonic X anime, then these story beats won't really mean much to you, but for those that are a fan of that series, this game makes several references to Chris Thorndike, it brings back the Meta-Rex as the big bad villains, it is so cool! The game also had high-effort cutscenes with voice acting, and for a fan project, the voice acting was extraordinarily good. And as far as the stages are concerned, they are all lush and lively, with different paths you can take and a constant flowing nature through all of them. And on a personal note, the first major stage, Chao Paradise, is probably my favorite Boost Sonic level of all time. I love this stage! It also helps that both Sonic and Shadow, our main playable characters in this game, have extremely responsive controls and just feel great to use. Also, this game is fairly challenging. This is not going to be a game you can just easily blaze through. You're going to have to get good if you want to play through this game, because if you don't have the skill to back up your moves, you're going to get punished hard. The game also features an array of bonus content, like trying to find Easter eggs that are hidden through the stages, or collecting red rings which unlock more flavor text for the world of Sonic. And visually speaking, Sonic Omens looks gorgeous! The coloring, the model work, the shading, the lighting, I love it all. It looks just like an official title. And on top of that, the OST for Sonic Omens is just fantastic. Now, Sonic Omens does feature a few extra gimmicks that not everyone may be a fan of. For example, two of these gimmicks are the Hyper Tornado stages. In these stages, you get to use, well, the Hyper Tornado, a vehicle that was introduced in the Sonic X anime. And these are pretty much Star Fox-esque stages. Now, as someone like me who really enjoys games like Star Fox, these sections were really fun. And as someone who grew up with Sonic X, being able to use the Hyper Tornado and fly it was such a dream come true. Though I will say for a fact that the last stage for the Hyper Tornado is definitely a lot more difficult than the rest. Another gimmicky thing that people might not like is found in Episode 3, The White Jungle. In this particular stage, you do end up going through a more puzzle-like, platforming-based section, which does take quite a fair amount of time. However, on repeat playthroughs, this is far more mitigated since you actually know what to expect. Now, moving on from that, the game also features an array of boss fights, and these are, at least for the most part, really fun. With my personal favorite out of the bunch being Metal Ember, which is a great high-speed action boss fight. Now, towards the final act of the game, we do end up getting a bit of a lore dump that kind of rushes the story on along to get everything covered. It isn't anything too major or terrible, it's just something that kind of surprised me on my first run. Also, I do want to take just a few moments to talk about the final boss, so if you don't want no spoilers, skip ahead. But Sonic Omen's final boss is so cool! You get to face off against a Metarex, just mano a mano. And this definitely has to be one of the most challenging final boss fights I've ever played in a Sonic game, fan game or otherwise. The way this boss fight works is that you're trying to avoid the big bad boss's attacks, getting enough energy to go temporarily supersonic, dealing damage to him over time. But then he'll blast you away, and you'll have to repeat the process again. The fight gets more intense the longer it goes on, but once you reach the final phase of the fight, the music kicks up tenfold with one of the best songs I've ever heard, Weight of the World, playing in the background. And facing off against this Metarex as the full power of Supersonic, it is just so cool. Being able to dodge attacks, landing blows whenever you have the chance. Oh my god! This is just such an epic final boss, from start to finish. As a complete package, Sonic Omens has a lot to offer. It may not be perfect, and it may have a few flaws, but as a fan project, this is outstanding. So if you're a fan of Sonic Unleashed and Sonic X, and you want to see what has to be one of the most beautiful Sonic fan games out there to date, then I'd suggest giving Sonic Omens a shot. I think it's a great game that definitely deserves a chance. Right then, our next entry up is a pretty major one, as it's a Sonic fan game that's been in development for quite some time. And that game being Sonic World DX. Now this title is being created by the Sonic World DX team, and it's pretty much a massive collection of different levels, characters, and features from throughout Sonic's history. And this title saw its latest release on November 30th of 2023. Now if you enjoy the way Sonic Heroes and or the adventure games play, then you will love Sonic World DX, because its physics and controls are actually based off of those games. On top of that, there are several different characters you can play with, that each have their own unique abilities and movesets, and they all feel great to control. There's also tons of different levels to play through that are based off of stages from throughout Sonic's career. You've got stages from Sonic Adventure 1, stages from Sonic Adventure 2, even stages from the Hero games, as well as 3D recreated levels from Sonic's classic games. So suffice it to say, there's a pretty large variety here. There's also an array of different missions that you can play in each stage, like a time attack, reach the goal, treasure hunting, Mach speed, boss battles, ring collecting, and so much more. There's also an entire modding system allowing you to add characters or other stuff to the game if you so wish, and to add icing onto the cake to just make it that much better, Sonic World DX features a fully functional Chow Garden. Oh my god! Sonic World DX is literally a love letter to the entire franchise, and with the ability to experience classic stages and modern stages in a brand new light, with an array of different characters, you'll be spending an unprecedented amount of time in this title. And the team behind this title have done a phenomenal job recreating the original adventure and Sonic Heroes feel, all while adding so much to the experience. So if you're a fan of the adventure games and or love Sonic Heroes, then I suggest that you give Sonic World DX a shot, because it's probably one of the best games out there right now for those that love the old adventure era. Well everyone, we've made it to another very well-known project in the Sonic fan game community, and one that's been in the works for quite some time. That being Sonic Project 06. Sonic Project 06 is a full-blown remake of the original Sonic 06, which was considered by many to be the worst Sonic game ever made, that saw release on November 14th of 2006. Now for context, the original Sonic 06 was a buggy mess. On top of that, it didn't play really well, and as a whole, it was a very rushed and poorly developed experience. But that's not to say that there wasn't potential in Sonic 06, as this game was trying to be the next big thing, and it showed a lot of potential and ambition. And this is then where Sonic Project 06 comes into play. This game was being created by Chaos X, and it started development all the way back in 2015. And since then, it has had quite a few demos over all these years. And as far as remakes go, Sonic Project 06 is beyond impressive. Not only does it add a bunch of fixes to bugs and other issues that were found in the original game, making it far more playable, but it also improves the physics and controls of characters, making it that much more enjoyable of an experience. On top of that, there's a slew of bonus content and power-ups that have been either tweaked or added to make the experience that much better, and it is still in active development, with the latest release actually featuring all of Silver stages being playable. And at this point, with the latest release, almost the entire game has already been remastered. There are still things missing like the last episode, boss battles, town missions, and a few other things, but the game is really close to being fully completed. And as it stands right now, for those that have already played the game, you're talking about a near 2-hour plus runtime. And for those that don't know the game, that's going to be even longer. The game also has tons of improvements to stage design, like different paths you can take, power-ups to find, and more. And just as an overall package, Sonic P06 is the definitive way to play Sonic 06. Graphically speaking, this game looks beyond phenomenal, giving the old Xbox 360 look of the game a way better up-res look, as well as adding additional effects and polish that pretty much makes this one of the best looking Sonic games out there right now. Of course, the music is already great because it literally is the original OST found in Sonic 06, and the OST in that game was already, well, fantastic, so that's to be expected. Now, yes, I know that Sonic P06 is not technically a full-fledged fan game, as it's a fan remake, but with the amount of effort and love and passion put into this project, it more than deserved to be a part of this list, and I'd be damned if I wasn't going to include it. So if you're wanting to play one of the most ambitious and impressive Sonic fan projects to date, then please, for the love of everything, take the time to check out Sonic P06. Because what Chaos X, as well as everyone that helped him, have created here is beyond spectacular. Okay, let's move on to our next entry, and this is a game that I recently found and fell in love with. That being Sonic Battle R. Sonic Battle R, for all intents and purposes, is like the unofficial spiritual sequel to Sonic R, as well as a far better and vastly improved upon version of the multiplayer mode found in Sonic Adventure 2. Now, for those that somehow don't know, Sonic R was an old game that released on November 18th of 1997, and it was Sonic's first on-foot 3D racing game. And afterwards, this concept would be revisited on December 20th of 2001 with the release of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, which added an entire multiplayer mode, with the ability to actually race against your friends on foot, just like the original Sonic R. But aside from these two releases, it's been quite some time since we've had a full-fledged, full 3D Sonic racing experience. Or at least a racing experience where Sonic and his friends are on foot. And that is where Sonic Battle R comes into play. Sonic Battle R was a game that was being worked on by J-Man and their team, and it saw its latest release on November 26th of 2023. Now, this game improves in so many aspects over the original Sonic R and Sonic Adventure 2 multiplayer. Not only is there a slew of different characters to experience, but there's also tons of cosmetics to find, pets to have, there's also a day and night cycle, secrets to find, an entire hub world to explore, and much, much more. This game is beyond in-depth, and as far as racing games go, this feels like a genuine evolution of the multiplayers we've had up to this point. Not only do you have special abilities and attacks you can use like Chaos Shift, but you also have the ability to do things like Lightspeed Dash, Spin Dash, and use other abilities like the Wisps and things of that nature. And the stages that are offered here in Sonic Battle R are vast in variety. Some stages are from Shadow the Hedgehog, while others are full-blown recreations of Sonic R's levels. And in total, Sonic Battle R sports an impressive 43 different stages for players to run through. So when I say there's a wide variety in stages, I mean it. But the greatest part about Sonic Battle R is the fact that it's fully online. If there are any servers available, you can hop in and test your skill against other players to prove who is the best of the best. Or you can make your own lobby and have other people join you. And on top of that, you can also make private lobbies for just you and your friends. The work and effort put into Sonic Battle R is truly astounding, and they've made something really special here. And on a bit of a personal note, when I was first getting footage for Sonic Battle R, I kept playing and playing and playing because I wanted to get better and better and better. This game just sucked me in, and when I was originally going to play for only 30 minutes, I ended up playing for like 3 hours. The game does have a bit of a learning curve when you first start off, but the more you practice and the better you get, the better the races will be and the more of a chance you'll have. And there are lots of amazing players playing Sonic Battle R right now that'll definitely give you a run for your money. So you better bring your A game if you want to beat some of the top tier players that hop into Sonic Battle R. In summary, this is the unofficial sequel to Sonic R and the Sonic Adventure 2 multiplayer. It adds all the best aspects from both experiences and improves them tenfold. And this game is still very much in active development. And with how much there already is here in the game now, I can't wait to see what else they bring to the table. So if you're a fan of Sonic multiplayer games as well as racing against your friends, then Sonic Battle R is the perfect game to jump into. And at least for me, I will always count this as the official sequel to Sonic R. Because Sonic Battle R is just that good. Well everyone, our next entry is another major one, as well as one that's been in development far longer than most Sonic fan games. That being Sonic Robo Blast 2. Sonic Robo Blast 2 is a game that was being created by Sonic Team Jr., and it's been in development since, and I kid you not, 1998. and it is still going through full active development right now as of 2024. The Sonic Robo Blast 2 is a full 3D open source Sonic fan game that was built off the original Doom engine, and it sets out to attempt to recreate the design and level gimmicks of the 2D titles, but now in 3D. And surprisingly, after so long in development, the game is not technically fully completed yet, but we do technically have a final boss and a full set of stages. Now this game features 8 different zones with a grand total of 25 levels to experience, and the designs of these stages are vast and expansive. There's tons of areas to explore and blaze through, and the design and style of each zone is very striking. There's also an array of different bosses to engage with, each with their own different mechanics and attack patterns to learn and fight against, and all of them are featured in a 3D-like arena, and they can prove to be a pretty decent challenge. Now, as far as the actual mechanics and feel of the game is concerned, this game feels phenomenal. The game's momentum, weight, and controls is just beyond good, and honest to God, this game's feel and look feels very much like something that Sega would actually create themselves in the later 90s if they were going to create a full-blown classic 3D Sonic game. And the style here is just really striking and one of a kind. It truly gives Sonic Robo Blast its own identity. And as far as music in the OST is concerned, OMG, they are all fire! The game also features full-blown special stages with the ability to collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds to turn it into a super form. And these special stages are actually based off of Nights into Dreams, which is really cool. Sonic Robo Blast also features an array of different modes to experience on top of the general story mode, like a racing mode, a deathmatch mode, a hide and seek and tag mode, a capture the flag mode. Holy moly, there is so much packed into this game. But probably the biggest thing about Sonic Robo Blast 2 is its mod scene. This game has so many add-ons and mods, it would take hours for me to list everything. From character mods, to ability mods, to stage mods, this game just has an insane modding community. And with how much there already is to do in Sonic Robo Blast's base game, on top of all the added mods and additions that you can experience, there is a near endless supply of content for Sonic Robo Blast 2. It is insane! I mean, for heaven's sake, there's an entire Sonic Robo Blast 2 Go-Kart add-on that turns the entire game into effectively a Mario Kart experience. And this add-on alone has 100 packed maps for you to explore with tons of different modes and cups. Holy crap! And with the amount of different add-ons and mods available to you, you can pretty much make the game look and play however you want. I honestly believe that Sonic Robo Blast 2 is one of the greatest fan games of all time, with one of the most dedicated fan bases ever. And if you've never experienced the amazing game that is Sonic Robo Blast 2, and or have never even taken a dive into the modding scene for this game, then you owe it to yourself to take the time to check it out. You will not be disappointed. And on a bit of a personal note, every time I play through Sonic Robo Blast 2, it always reminds me of the Sega Saturn. And in a weird way, I kind of count this as the Sega Saturn Sonic game that we should have gotten. So I encourage you to check out what Sonic Team Jr. has created here, because what we have here is truly extraordinary. Okay everyone, we are getting near the very end of this list, and we've only got about 2 more entries to go. And the first one up is Big's Big World. Big's Big World. This is a game created by SpacePig22, and it saw its latest update on August 9th of 2021. And it is unironically one of the best 3D Sonic games I have ever played. Now, for those that don't know, this title is actually based on Big's story mode found in Sonic Adventure 1, where Big travels to all the different stages found in Sonic Adventure 1 in order to fish and save his best friend Froggy. It wasn't anything too intense, it was a pretty straightforward experience. Now, it should be noted that if you weren't a fan of Big's story in Sonic Adventure 1 or a fan of his gameplay, then Big's Big World is not for you. Because this game is literally an open world Sonic game where all you do is fish. That is correct. This is a massive open world where there are bodies of water everywhere, where at the start of the game, Froggy actually ends up running away, and he'll randomly spawn at a random location throughout this massive open world. And it's your job to, well, go and find him out of this gigantic area. You've got areas like Green Hill Zone, Station Square, all the Sonic R tracks. There is so many places to go in this game. On top of that, there's an array of secrets to find. Whether it's upgrading abilities for Big or Chaos Emeralds, you will be rewarded for exploration. And with the randomized nature of Big's Big World, you can replay the game over and over again and have a bit of a different experience. Now, as far as the main gameplay is concerned, it again is literally just Sonic Adventure 1's fishing, but on a far wider scale. You can fish in pretty much any body of water and collect whatever fish you want, and the game's controls are pretty one-to-one with the original Sonic Adventure controls. Overall, Big's Big World is just a freaking vibe. Being able to chill and explore such a vast area, see all the cool zones that have been in Sonic's world over the years, just to sit down and do some fishing and listen to some bombing music in the background, it is just so relaxing. I really do love it. Now, I do want to go over spoilers for just a few moments, so skip ahead if you don't want to get spoiled on one of the coolest surprises in this game. But, like I've already stated, you can find the Chaos Emeralds. And once you do find all of them, you can use Super Big. I'm not joking, you can turn this big fat purple cat into a gosh darn fast flying golden god. I love this game. And what's even funnier is that when Big's in his super form, he plays very, very well. It's actually a lot of fun to zoom around the entire open world with his super ability. It's just so cool. Big's Big World is unironically one of the most interesting, unique, and funnest experiences out there right now as far as Sonic fan games go. So if you're a fan of fishing at Sonic Adventure 1 or a fan of Big the Cat, then I honestly believe you'll have an unforgettable experience in Big's Big World. And now we have finally reached the end of the 3D Sonic fan game list. And I left my personal favorite of all time for last. That being Sonic GT. This is a game that was created by Greedy Raider and it saw its latest release on September 3rd of 2020. Sonic GT, also known as Sonic Grand Tour, is a fan game that features 4 massive stages that are all extremely expansive and offer a variety of areas to explore and find secrets and more. It also features an entire story with voice acting and cutscenes. Now, as far as the story is concerned, it features Sonic and Tails running into Mighty, who is trying to save his best friend Ray, who has now been captured by Dr. Eggman. And now it's our mission to blaze through all these massive stages to hunt down and find where Ray is being held captive and free him from Dr. Eggman's clutches. The story is pretty straightforward and really easy to follow, and the voice acting here, as well as the general banter between characters, is just outstanding. But what's even more spectacular is the actual gameplay itself. This game feels and plays like a dream. The entire game is momentum and trick based, and the better you are using ramps and other things to maintain your speed, the more you're rewarded with doing so. You also have an array of different characters you can use, like Sonic, Ray, and Mighty, each of them with their own abilities, acceleration, slope influence, and much, much more. But on top of this, there's a slew of extra unlockable characters that also have their own insane amount of abilities, like Classic Sonic, Shadow, Metal Sonic, and of course, the golden boy himself, Super Sonic. You can get all these characters unlocked by finding secrets that are found and littered through all these massive stages, which is why you should definitely take the time to explore, because there's so much to find in these expansive areas. There's also an array of boss fights that you can face against, each of them providing their own unique challenge. And once you're more accustomed to their mechanics, you can thrash them pretty easily. Graphically speaking, this game looks beyond phenomenal, one of the absolute best Sonic fan games I have ever seen, and it looks better than most official Sonic games. And as far as music's concerned, oh lord, all of these tracks are so good. To be 100% honest and open, if you would have showed me Sonic GT when I was younger and told me it was official, I would have believed you. Now, as beautiful and as amazing as Sonic GT is, I do have just a few little nitpicks. The first really doesn't matter, but the actual music that plays for the final bosses, it's okay. It doesn't quite really fit the theme. And the second, more biggish issue is the fact that Sonic GT actually ends on a pretty big cliffhanger, and as of now, it doesn't look like we're ever going to get a sequel to this game. At least there's been no hint at a sequel being produced, which really sucks. But aside from these two very meaningless little nitpicks of my own, this is pretty much a perfect Sonic game. And even if it isn't the longest experience in the world, it will leave you with a massive impact. Now, yeah, it definitely does suck that we'll probably never get a sequel to Sonic GT or wrap up the actual cliffhanger, but Greedy has made another game called Project Rascal. And if you loved Sonic GT and you want more of it, then Project Rascal is probably the best game for you to jump into. But aside from that, as far as Sonic GT is concerned, this is definitely one of the best 3D Sonic experiences out there right now. And if you're a fan of momentum-based gameplay, and you're a fan of finding secrets in massive open zones, then you will adore this title, guaranteed. And with that, we have finally reached the end of the top 3D Sonic fan games. But we're not done just yet, so let's move on to our very next section. Welcome to the third section of the video, Honorable Mentions. Games in this section are ones that are either fairly short but still really high quality, and or games that sadly ended up getting cancelled but still more than deserve a mention. So with that, let's take on our first entry, Sonic Utopia. Sonic Utopia, one of the most well-known and well-received fan games ever made. It was created by Great Lang and saw release in Sage of 2017, with its last update on September 5th of that year. Sonic Utopia was one of the most major projects of its time. Not only did it inspire tons of different fan games after its release, but it also showcased the true potential that momentum-based gameplay could have. And when this game launched, it took the internet by storm. And even today, people talk about Sonic Utopia on the regular. And there are even projects out there right now that are based on Sonic Utopia, trying to continue the original work found in the early demo. Now this game had a lot of potential. Not only did it look absolutely stunning with fantastic music, but the gameplay and momentum and physics of this title was unmatched. Some of the best that were ever made. And it made a lot of fans wish that Sega would take Sonic Utopia as inspiration because of how good it was. And originally there was a lot more planned for Sonic Utopia, like turning it into a full-fledged game. However, for one reason or another, Sonic Utopia's development has actually gone completely dark, and we haven't seen an update from this game for quite some time. And sadly, as of now, the only playable thing we have for Sonic Utopia is the original 2017 demo. Maybe one day, if we're lucky, Sonic Utopia will get revived, or at least we'll see some kind of update on the project. But as it stands right now, the original 2017 demo is still worth your time to check out. It might just be a demo, but it's still one of the best and most polished experiences out there to date, and it helps show the amazing potential that Sonic has when given free roam over massive areas using momentum-based gameplay as its backbone. Okay, next up is a fan game that features gameplay similar to that of the advanced titles, but has a beautiful and unique art style to go along with it. A game known as Petite Hedgehog. This is a game being created by Shang, and it saw its latest demo released during Sage of 2018. It featured a grand total of 3 characters to play with, each with their own unique abilities to use during gameplay. And the demo also featured a grand total of 3 unique zones to run through and a test level as well. Now right off the bat, the most striking thing with Petite Hedgehog is, well, its art style. The developer himself has gone on record stating that one of the biggest inspirations for the style choice of the game is from titles like The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker and the general toon style aesthetic. And I think he hit the nail right on the head with Petite Hedgehog. The sprites and the tilesets found here are a beautiful mix of different pastel colors, and they're all extremely striking and well detailed. Now as far as controls and level design is concerned, all the characters feel and play great. Sonic has the ability to use the homing attack, Shadow has the ability to use the Chaos Dive, and Amy, who is our latest playable character, has the ability to use a double jump, which is extremely versatile. And the levels themselves are constructed in a way to take full advantage of these abilities. And on top of that, all the levels are widely unique in their identity, and they all have different paths that you can take to reach the end goal. And just overall, the level structure is very solid. And the music and the sound effects are all very good, pretty much being very akin to the Advanced series, with the sound effects actually coming directly from that set of games. Now as far as the game's current status, I wasn't actually able to confirm whether the game is cancelled or not. The last major update on Petite Hedgehog came from a Q&A from the developer's YouTube page that was published on October 23rd of 2018. But since the Q&A, the developer has pretty much gone silent for the development of Petite Hedgehog. So there's a very high chance that the game has been cancelled, and or might just be on a hiatus. But without the developer confirming it himself, there's no real way to tell. I suppose the best thing for us to do at the moment is just hope that this project is still being worked on in the background during the developer's free time. And in the future, we may get the opportunity to play through the full Petite Hedgehog experience. But as of now, at least we have this small, yet awesome and fun-filled demo to play through. Next up, we have a really short and fast entry, that being Sonic 3D Blitz. Sonic 3D Blitz was a game that was released by Cat 45, that's pretty much made in the same style as Sega Sonic. Now this tiny little fan game features 7 different zones to run through, all with a variety of different themes. There's also a boss that you can face off towards the end that isn't all too difficult. Now as far as the physics and controls are concerned, it does take a bit to get used to. Since the original Sega Sonic did use a trackball, you'll have to get accustomed to a whole new set of controls in order to move Sonic around this isometric area. The level design isn't anything insane, you're just running to get to the end goalpost, all while avoiding obstacles and taking out baddies, but for a short 20 to 30 minute experience, this is actually pretty fun. You also have the added ability of using the homing attack on enemies, which is a pretty cool feature to have. Sonic 3D Blast may not be the most insane fan game out in the world, but for those like me that love Sega Sonic and the style that it brings, and that wish that we had a remake of that old arcade release, this actually scratches that itch. It might not be the most insane game in the world, but I think Cat 45 has done an amazing job here, and it's definitely worth the look, especially if you're a fan of Sega Sonic. Alright, our next entry is for another really cool 2D Sonic game. However, it's one that sadly did get cancelled. That being Sonic Hoshi. This is a title being created by Glaceau that saw its last and most recent release on August of 2023, with its final development build being released on that date. Now this title takes place right after the events of Sonic 2, where Sonic is running outside the Death Egg and flies along with Tails in his super form. But soon they're suddenly attacked by none other than Metal Sonic, who ends up swiping the emeralds and then dashes off. And now it's your job to go and get them back. You also find out later that there's apparently an entity known as the Celestial Star that actually rivals the very power of all the Chaos Emeralds. And now it's a race to see who can get to the Celestial Star first. The story setup was really cool, and the whole idea of having an entity being more powerful than the Chaos Emeralds was a really interesting idea. Now as far as the game itself is concerned, it was beautiful. Not only is the sprite work absolutely amazing, but the music is top notch, and Sonic and Tails feel amazing to play. On top of this, Sonic has this awesome added ability that is extremely OP. That ability being the Star Dash. This ability lets you keep some insane speed and momentum, and honest to God, this would be a great addition to classic Sonic's moveset going forward. Now the final development build featured 3 fully playable zones, with there being a 4th zone that was a bit of a work in progress that couldn't actually be beaten. But as far as the 3 stages that are fully playable, the level structure is fairly solid, with lots of different obstacles to avoid, gimmicks to experience, and tons of areas where you just blaze around at high speeds. However, sadly, it would later be revealed that the developer lost interest in the game and decided not to go forward with the project, instead working on their own original IP. Now, of course, I totally respect the developer wanting to go their own way to make their own game. That is awesome. But it's still definitely a shame that Sonic Hoshi will never see completion. So even if the Sonic Hoshi project did end up getting canned, at least we have this final development build to play through. And who knows, maybe someone else might pick up the Sonic Hoshi project and continue where the original developers left off. Okay, next up is actually a homebrew game for the Sega Saturn. That being Sonic X-Treme. Sonic X-Treme. For those that don't know, this was the most infamous canceled Sonic game of all time that was originally going to be the big 3D Sonic game for the Sega Saturn. However, due to development hell, this never happened and the game got canned. Well, on August 29th of 2022, we would see a homebrew release of Sonic X-Treme by Voxel. And this pretty much was a short but polished full Sonic X-Treme experience. With 4 different levels to run through and a boss to take on, this is a very well made game. There's also a slew of different options and additions, like the ability to turn on and off the fisheye lens, the ability to switch between the Sonic sprite to an actual full 3D model, as well as the ability to play 2-player co-op. The stages themselves are pretty short, but they're still pretty fun to run through, and though this might not be the longest game in the world, it is still awesome to be able to play a somewhat finished experience for Sonic X-Treme. Now this actually was not the only Sonic X-Treme project that was created by fans. There was actually another project created by XL2 that saw release on August 1st of 2018, called Sonic Z-Stream. Sonic Z-Stream pretty much reimagined Sonic X-Treme, but as a mainly 3D only game, with Sonic rocking his own 3D model and the fisheye lens being completely ditched. Now this game isn't all too terribly long, it only has about 4 different stages to actually experience, but what we have here is a really awesome proof of concept. Also, Sonic plays fairly well, at least once you get used to his weight and physics, and overall, this is a very short and fun little game. To go along with this, XL2 also did create a Metal Sonic boss fight using the same engine, and it's also a pretty fun little run. Now sadly, this project did end up getting cancelled, and no more updates have been put on the Sonic Z-Stream project, which really sucks because this showed a lot of awesome potential, and I would have killed to see this be fully playable. But as it stands, these 2 demos are the closest we will ever get to a full Sonic X-Treme experience. And if that's the case, I'm more than happy with what we have, because I think they have done a phenomenal job. Next up is a game that is actually a remake of one of the earliest Sonic fan games to ever exist. A game known as Sonic Robo-Blast. This was a remake being created by SNCC that saw its only demo release in August of 2020. Now for those that don't know, the original Sonic Robo-Blast was a fairly primitive fan game with simple controls and was all around pretty rough. But at the time, it was the general norm for Sonic fan games. The original game was created by the same team that made Sonic Robo-Blast 2, that being Sonic Team Junior. And this old fan game saw its last update in 1998. So it's fair to say that it has definitely aged, especially when compared to its sequel, Sonic Robo Blast 2, as well as when compared to more modern Sonic fan games. However, SNCC set out to make this old school fan game playable for the modern era, and this is when the Sonic Robo Blast remake was born. The demo that was created for this remake featured one fully playable zone, being Knothole Coast. The game's controls and feel was that of the old Genesis titles, as we expected, and the level design was fairly solid and consistent. The sprite work here was absolutely phenomenal, and the music was really good too. And on top of that, the game also features boss fights that stay fairly faithful to the original source material, but now with an updated look and refined attacks. Unfortunately though, this fan game did end up getting cancelled during its development, and the only thing we ever got related to this remake was the original demo. And that's just an honest shame. Though the demo is rather a short experience, it is still a beautiful attempt at remaking one of the oldest Sonic fan games known in the community, and it easily could have been the definitive way to play Sonic Robo Blast 1. But if we could be so lucky, maybe someone will end up being inspired and revitalize this cancelled remake. Or maybe Sonic Team Jr. will actually come back to their original game and remake it for modern play. Crazier things have happened before, so I think it's highly possible. But until that day comes, at least we have this fantastic little demo to show us what a full-blown Robo Blast remake could be. Okay, our next entry is one that came out all the way back in 2016, and it's one that's actually fairly well known, that being Green Hill Paradise Act 2. This title saw release on August 27th of 2016 from Super Sonic 68 and their team. This game was pretty much a modern Sonic game, but staying true to the original momentum elements found in the old Genesis titles. Think of Sonic Utopia, but with modern Sonic elements. Now this game pretty much featured you running around a massive open zone Green Hill that had plenty of secrets to find and things to do, like the ability to find the Chaos Emeralds, as well as find the ability to turn them into Super Emeralds to unlock extra forms like Supersonic and even Hypersonic. Now the way you traverse this massive stage is actually using Sonic's innate abilities. There is no boost pads, springs, or anything. It's all about using the environment around you and momentum in order to gain insane speeds to explore this massive area. And that's pretty much the general gist of it. Graphically speaking, the game looks absolutely stunning, the music is also really good with a remix of Green Hill Zone, and Sonic plays and feels fantastic. You also have the ability to enter into a Mach state once you pick up enough speed, which will send you flying through the stage, and it feels so satisfying when you finally do reach that high amount of velocity. In general, Green Hill Paradise Act 2 is a spectacular game that proves the concept of a momentum-based Sonic title is not only feasible, but one that can reward players for exploring and experimenting with the environment around them, as well as with Sonic's innate abilities. And when looking at previous entries on this list, like Sonic Encore and Sonic GT, the concept has been more than proven. And one can only hope that future Sonic titles adapt the ideas found in Green Hill Paradise Act 2 and other projects made in a similar fashion. Next up, we have a very short and sweet but really cute Sonic fan game, known as Sonic Speed Course. Sonic Speed Course was created by Sharp, and it saw release in 2020. And this game effectively is Kirby's Dream Course, but with Sonic elements. Now, for those that don't know, Kirby's Dream Course was a spin-off game that saw release on the SNES on September 21st of 1994, and effectively was, well, Kirby Mini Golf. That'd be the best way to put it. And Sonic Speed Course effectively is the same exact thing. Now this cute little game is in this really adorable 3D-like style, with 3D-like levels, enemies, and everything. It also features 12 unique courses split across 2 different worlds, each of them with their own unique gimmicks to play against. And for those that are a fan of Kirby's Dream Course, as well as Sonic, and or want to experience a very unique take on Sonic the Hedgehog versus what we normally get, then Sonic Speed Course is definitely a game you should check out. It's short, it's easy, and generally just a good game to look at and fun to play. And I really wish that this game would come back with another demo in the future. It might not be the most intense game in the world, but it definitely deserves a chance nonetheless. Okay, next up is an entry that has a fairly mysterious origin, a title known as Sonic Rebirth. Sonic Rebirth is a fan game that fully remakes the original Sonic 1, utilizing modern Sonic elements. Now, when I was trying to do research with this title, I wasn't actually able to find who initially started the development of Sonic Rebirth. But the game does have a set of in-game credits that list everyone that has worked on the project. So going forward, I'll just be referring to this group as the Rebirth team. Now, with that said, Sonic Rebirth was created by the Rebirth team, and it saw release sometime around 2009 to 2010, And this remake does bring along with it a fair amount of additions, like unique sprites and tile sets, updated and changed sound effects, tons of in-game content like extra missions and zones, in-game cutscenes, an additional character to play as, that being Tails, who is super OP in this game, and more. Now, it should be understood that this game has aged a bit. Some of the spelling found in the cutscenes is off, and there are a good handful of glitches and little issues you might run into, like how Sonic's physics are pretty solid, but not totally one-to-one to the original. But with the age of the fan game in mind, it's actually fairly impressive what's been created here. And to top it all off, Sonic Rebirth is fully playable, meaning that you can play all the way to the final boss and get the ending cutscene. Though this does depend on the version you're playing. If you go online and search for Sonic Rebirth, most of the time you'll run into what is known as version 3.0 beta. This particular version has levels from both the Genesis version and Master System version being playable in one full run. However, Act 2 of Scrap Brain Zone is glitched, and you aren't actually able to fully complete the game. But there does exist another version that not only features all of the zones fully playable with an ending, but features an array of bonus content. And this is the particular version that I've been talking about. But what's surprising to note is that this particular version that I've been referencing is actually a previous version of Sonic Rebirth, with the unbeatable 3.0 beta being the latest release. But due to the obscurity of Sonic Rebirth in general, and with the 3.0 beta being the most widely seen version of the game, it actually is fairly difficult to find the previous version of Rebirth that is fully playable. And I personally don't even remember how I was able to find it. I've just had it on my computer for like the past 3 years. So because I'm so awesome, and to make things easier on you guys, I will of course have the fully playable version down in the description below for you to download and check out for yourself. Though, keep in mind, you will have all the Chaos Emeralds already unlocked, and I'm not entirely sure how to reset the save file, so just keep that in mind. Oh, and also, to make everyone aware, some of the missions are not fully working in this particular version of Rebirth, so you might not be able to complete all of the bonus content that there is, but there's still a rather substantial amount to do nonetheless. As it stands, Sonic Rebirth is a fairly well-made remake of Sonic 1, and even with its age, it does still hold up today. Now, of course, you can just use mods on the original Sonic 1 to get the same experience with none of the issues found in Rebirth. But with the fact that this was, at the time, the only major remake of Sonic 1 that existed, and with the amount of content that's been packed into it, I believe that it is still more than impressive, and definitely deserves to be a part of this list. So if you want to see what has to be one of the oldest, and yet one of the most impressive, at least for its time, Sonic fan games, then I would recommend taking the time to explore Sonic Rebirth and all that it has to offer. Alright, our next entry is a very unique one, that being a full VR Sonic fan game, known by the title as Virtua Sonic. Virtua Sonic was a game that was created by Supersonic 68, and it saw its release during Sage of 2020. This was a full-blown virtual reality experience that pretty much puts you in the shoes of the Blue Blur man himself. The game features a grand total of 2 unique zones to run through and a boss to take on, with the main objective of the game being that you need to save Cheese, who's been captured by Eggman. Now, the story isn't anything too intense, it's fairly basic and something that fits the Sonic brand nicely, but to go along with the story and setup is, surprisingly, voice acting. The voice acting here is actually pretty good, especially for a short little VR experience, and I think it's a great addition to the game overall. Now, graphically speaking, the game looks very good. The lighting is pretty solid and the colors used are all fairly bright and beautiful. And the model work in general is very nice for a VR game. And as far as gameplay is concerned, Sonic's controls are all fairly solid, with the game mainly featuring easy runways and a light amount of obstacles to deal with. Now, this game isn't entirely all that long, and it can be easily beaten in about 15 minutes. But what's here is pretty fun. It shows a really cool concept of a Sonic game in VR, and the fact that this game has voice acting in it, a boss to take on, and a few levels to run through is honestly really cool. This may not be the most in-depth game in the world, but Virtua Sonic is still fairly fun, and a cool look at what a Sonic VR game could be. And for those like me that have always dreamt about running through the lush, beautiful zones found in Sonic games, then Virtua Sonic is a great game to jump into to fulfill that dream. Our next entry is another one that did unfortunately get cancelled that showed an unparalleled amount of potential. That being Sonic Chaos. Sonic Chaos was going to be a full-blown remake that was being created by Mr. Potato Badger that saw its latest update on August 29th of 2018. Now this is going to be a full-blown remake of an old Game Gear title by the same name, Sonic Chaos, that saw release on November 19th of 1993. Now this old Game Gear title wasn't terrible by any means, but it definitely has aged over all these years, and that's where Mr. Potato Badger's project was going to come into play. This remake was going to bring the old Game Gear game up to the same standards as something you'd find on the Sega Genesis, and was going to achieve this by updating the visuals, the mechanics, the gimmicks, and much more. Effectively looking like the Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit treatment, but for Sonic Chaos. But sadly this game did end up getting cancelled, which is a complete shame, because it not only looked like a whole lot of fun, but it could have given this Game Gear title a true chance to shine with some modern upbringing. Now as far as the demo is concerned, it features the entire first zone of Sonic Chaos being completely remade in a Sonic Mania-like style, with some high quality and well-detailed sprite work. Of course, Sonic, as to be expected at this point, pretty much feels one-to-one with the Genesis originals, and the level design is also fairly well constructed. The demo also comes accompanied with a few original Game Gear tracks receiving that beautiful Mania-like jazzy treatment. And to top it all off, the demo does feature a wholly unique boss fight towards the end. And when looking at the Sonic Chaos demo as a whole, what's been made here is fairly impressive. It is truly near criminal that this beautiful remake will most likely never see full completion. But if we're lucky, maybe someone else will take on the challenge of remaking this old Game Gear classic, and giving it the modernized treatment that it more than deserves. But until then, at least we have this well-created demo to help show the beauty that Sonic Chaos can have if given a chance. Our next entry on this list is a new take on the Sonic Rush series, known as Sonic Rush 3D. Sonic Rush 3D was released by the Rush 3D team, and its demo released during the Sage of 2021. The game sets out to fully reimagine the Rush games in a new 3D perspective, and the demo that we got from the team achieves this in spades. The demo features a single playable level, with Sonic being our only playable character, but what it might lack in content, it more than makes up for in gameplay. Sonic feels super responsive and has all of his abilities from the Rush games. The trick system is in full effect, and you have a boost gauge that you can fill up by performing tricks, taking out enemies, and by collecting rings, and that when used, offers a sudden increase of speed that when used properly can be very rewarding. The level layout isn't too intensive, but offers a fairly nice flow, and offers the players a chance to use all of Sonic's abilities, and when played optimally, you can play like a mad speed demon in this demo. Now as far as the general aesthetic and graphics of this demo is concerned, it looks just like an old DS game, with all the models and textures being pretty much one-to-one with what the handheld could put out at the time. There might not be all that much to talk about at the moment since this demo is fairly short, but in summary, Sonic Rush 3D is a high-energy title that is a blast to play. Unfortunately though, this is another one of those fan games that is no longer in active development. According to the devs, due to life just being what it is, they had to put the project on hold for the time being. And it's been quite some time since we've heard anything from the devs. Thankfully, they did say that they plan to come back and revitalize the development of Sonic Rush 3D, with a whole bunch of new content to show off. But there's always a chance that this might not happen. So for now, the best we can really do is just wait for the Rush 3D team to come back and continue their stellar work. But even if that doesn't happen, I'm more than sure that someone else will pick up the Rush 3D project, because what's been done here in the demo is just way too cool to abandon. And now we are finally at the last entry on the list. Sonic Freedom. Oh boy, Sonic Freedom. This is something that's had quite the history. Sonic Freedom is a game that was being created by Triple Jazz. However, it first began its life as a beautiful piece of concept animation. Now the trailer showed some absolutely beautiful animation, and it showcased a few really interesting mechanics for Sonic, like the ability to jump off of most of the terrain, and of the ability to slow down time and use a bullet dash, being able to focus your shot with more precision. It was a very good piece of animation, and it was highly praised by the community as a dream Sonic game. And surprisingly, Triple Jazz would actually take this original proof of concept trailer and turn it into a full-blown game that would be called Sonic Freedom. And we would eventually get a demo for this game on September 3rd of 2020, that being the alpha preview. And holy crap, did it look beautiful! The animation here was absolutely stunning, the background of the art was fantastic, and it was just shocking of how good this game looked. On top of that, he was actually able to implement the original proof of concept idea with the bullet dash, being able to shoot yourself in any of all directions. Now as far as gameplay goes, Sonic feels pretty dang solid, and the extra ability of bullet dash when used in-game is just genius. And going forward, this game was going to actually be structured as more of a Metroidvania, And that alone is such a cool idea. We've already talked about earlier on this list with Sonic Chrono Adventure of how cool a Sonic/Metroid-like game could be. And with a whole Metroidvania style game like Sonic Freedom that's hand-drawn, oh my lord, it would have been fantastic. The game would receive consistent updates showcasing new ideas and more, and eventually we'd actually end up getting an announcement at an additional character being added into the game. That being freaking Espio, and he looked so cool! Now, as absolutely stunning as this demo was, and how cool of a concept Sonic Freedom is, we sadly would start getting less and less updates, and eventually the project would end up going dark. With the latest and most surprising update on the game actually coming from Triple Jazz on January 6th of 2024 on Twitter/X, where he actually showed the original final cutscene that was going to play for Sonic Freedom, where it showed Super Sonic blazing up into the sky, destroying Eggman's latest big bad fortress. But sadly, in that same post, Triple Jazz stated that it was probably never going to be fully finished or fully realized. And that is definitely a shame. If Triple Jazz really wants to, maybe he'll start back up development on Sonic Freedom and fully realize the original envisioning that he had. Because the concepts and ideas here, the animation, all of it was just beautiful. And I so hope that Sonic Freedom is given another chance later down the road. And with that, we have finally reached the end of the honorable mentions. But let's not waste too much time and slide on over to the final segment in the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. Welcome to the final portion in this mass collection, that being the upcoming Sonic fan games. All the games in this segment are ones that are still in active development that show an unparalleled amount of potential. But just to make things fair, these upcoming fan games either have to have a demo related to them or have to have a lot of information, videos, and screenshots of the game being played. That way the video doesn't get overrun with fan games that have next to no information on them. So with all that said, let's hop into our very first entry. Sonic Test Labs. Now this is a fan game that actually combines elements found in games like Jet Set Radio and the adventure games, and it's currently being created by the Test Labs team, and it saw its latest release on December 21st of 2023. This title pretty much features Gun trying to hunt down and capture Sonic so they can put him into a bunch of different testing areas to gauge his abilities and find out the best way to deal with him. As of right now, Sonic Test Labs features 4 full-blown levels, as well as a cool test area to test other things out, as well as test an additional character. But I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. First off, as far as the game graphically is concerned, this has to be one of the most interesting takes on Sonic in a 3D environment. Sonic's model is very bouncy and floaty, and the general design of the world and levels is very somewhat flat and yet artsy. And the music that backs up these stages are all top-notch, banger after banger. And as far as gameplay is concerned, Sonic feels amazing. He has an array of different abilities to consistently maintain speed, like being able to use tricks to maintain air time, drop dash, spin dash, homing attack, light speed. Sonic is packed to the brim with abilities, but all of them feel great to use and will allow you to maintain speed in the flow of the stage very easily. And on top of all that, the entire game is momentum based, which you already know I'm a huge fan of that. Because of this, the stages are laid out in a way that take full advantage of Sonic's abilities and momentum, and you'll be sprinting through these stages the more you learn their layouts and the better you get with Sonic's abilities. There's also a full ranking system which pretty much encourages you to get better and better at each stage. Furthermore, Sonic Test Labs does have additional characters planned, with one of them being playable in the test level, that being Tangle. The way they made Tangle is kind of like Spider-Man x Sonic, and it feels so good. Sonic Test Labs may not be the biggest game in the world, and if you're already experienced, you'll probably be able to blaze through this game within about 15 to 20 minutes, worst case scenario, and for a blind run, it might take you a tad bit longer if you're wanting to perform well, but even with such a short experience, Sonic Test Labs is a joyride from start to finish. And with the game still being in active development and Whisper being planned as an additional character later down the road, oh, I am more than ecstatic to see what Sonic Test Labs has in store for us. So if you're a fan of Jet Set Radio and that more flat, artsy kind of style, as well as a fan of more momentum-based Sonic games, then Sonic Test Labs will be right up your alley, and once you play it once, you'll just want to play it again. Next up, we have a really cool and upcoming 2D Sonic game, called Sonic Outbound. Sonic Outbound is an up-and-coming 2D Sonic game by Project 255, that saw its latest release on April 23rd of 2023. Now this game is set 1 year after Sonic Mania's bad ending, where Dr. Ivor Robotnik has the Phantom Ruby and the Chaos Emeralds in his possession. And now he's on a mission to start collecting the Time Stones to prepare for his greatest evil plan yet. The setup is pretty interesting, and as far as the demo that we have right now is concerned, it is a very striking experience. Not only is the UI and sprite work very flashy, but the music is also really good. And on top of this, Sonic feels fantastic, just as good as the old Genesis games. Now the demo that we have currently only has about 2 zones with 4 acts each and 4 bosses to fight against. And if you take the time to look over some of the older demos from Sonic Outbound, there is a lot of work and love being put into this project, and it very well is on track to become one of the next big 2D Sonic fan games. Now keep in mind, this game is still in early development, and it's got a ways to go before it's fully completed, but what we have now is awesome. And if you have the time, then I would definitely suggest that you check out the 2023 demo, because what Project 255 has created here is just absolutely stellar. Okay, next up is a fan remake of a Sonic spin-off, a game called Sonic Riders X. Sonic Riders X is being developed by, and I'm so sorry I'm probably going to butcher y'all's names, S-Gigas and Beats, and saw its latest public demo come out on October 13th of 2021. Now this is a full-blown remake of the original Sonic Riders, which came out on February 21st of 2006 on the GameCube. And this title featured Sonic and friends racing around on extreme gear, which effectively are really fast and fancy hoverboards. And that's pretty much Sonic Riders in a nutshell. And Sonic Riders X is pretty much the same experience, but now with a beautiful new coat of paint and a combination of features and mechanics found in both the OG Sonic Riders and the Zero Gravity Riders. Now the demo that we have has a total of 5 different raceways with 3 characters at our immediate disposal, each of them with their own unique classes, that being Power, Air, and Speed, and each of them have access to different pathways on the racetrack. You also can unlock an additional character, being Jet the Hawk, by completing a time trial on Metal City, which is really cool. This fan game also has a full-blown mod system, where you can actually play custom tracks, which is fantastic. And as of right now, there's actually an array of custom tracks to experience. So between the 5 stages in base game, as well as all the different modded stages you can play through, there's quite a lot to experience. But as amazing as all this is, unfortunately, the demo that we have right now doesn't actually support online multiplayer or local multiplayer, so you won't be able to race against your friends or anyone else for that matter, at least not yet. But even when we don't have that, this demo still has a lot to offer. The game feels and controls almost identical to the original, with the ability to pull off tricks in the air, drifting around corners, and boosting anytime you want, the works. And the fact that we haven't gotten a Sonic Riders remake like this yet just boggles my mind, especially since Sonic Riders X has proven how fantastic it can be. Also, the game is still in active development, with the game actually receiving regular devlogs on their Discord, and the game has even gotten a recent name change, with the game now being known as Sonic Riders Evolution. We might not have any new playable demos just yet, but once here in Sonic Riders X proves that there is plenty more to come. And if development continues the way it has been, this could very well be a game that more than measures up to the original Sonic Riders and its sequels. Next up, we have another up-and-coming 2D Sonic game that is currently in active development, known as Sonic Legends. Sonic Legends first began its development in 2017, and it first started out as a modification for Sonic Mania, but now it's becoming its own full-fledged experience, and it shows some serious promise. Now this game is being created by Team Ultra Ring, and it saw its latest release in 2023. The demo showcases 2 playable characters, Sonic and Tails, as well as a grand total of 3 different levels, that being Sunrise Gate Zone Act 1 and 2, and Panic City Zone Act 1. And the demo even features a full-fledged boss fight that has a very unique design. Graphically speaking, this game looks stunning and the music is top-notch. And as far as the physics and gameplay is concerned, Sonic and Tails feel just as good as the official games. Now the story of Sonic Legends actually takes place where Sonic was born, on Christmas Island. Now as far as the story goes, Sonic Legends has a very awesome concept. You see, this game takes place right after the events of Knuckles' Chaotix, where Dr. Eggman has decided to expand upon his Dark Ring experiment by trying to use the Chaos Emeralds along with the Dark Rings, to kind of mix them together. And on top of this, he's also using the substance known as Fossil for his experiment, and he's actually mining it from Christmas Island, Sonic's birthplace. However, his experiment actually ends up backfiring, and just as Sonic and friends go and try and stop him, it turns out that he's actually ripped a hole in the fabric of reality, and created an entry point into the Nexus dimension, which also leads to the Master Emerald being ripped right out of its altar and creating a convergence point of multiple timelines. But these just aren't any timelines. They're actually timelines from Sonic fan games. In fact, the levels that you run through in Sonic Legends are actually from other Sonic fan games, like Sunrise Gate, which is actually from Sonic Overture, and Panic City Zone is actually from an old 2006 fan game known as Sonic Utopia, and there's a whole bunch more planned. And the idea of creating an entire fan game and basing its story off of a multiverse of other fan games, that is just so genius. What a creative idea. As a whole, Sonic Legends is already on track to becoming another top-tier Sonic fan game. And with such an awesome story backing it up, I can only imagine what's going to be coming next for Sonic Legends. And I really hope this game does see full completion. Now, we're probably going to have to wait a bit before we see any more on Sonic Legends, let alone for it to see full release. But honestly, with how amazing the story is and the gameplay, I'm more than willing to wait. Next up is a fan game that is actually being created by the same dev that made the amazing Sonic Triple Trouble remake. A game called Sonic Drift 16-bit. That's right, the main man Noah is back again on this list because he and his team have set out to remake another old school Game Gear title known as Sonic Drift. Now, for those that don't know, Sonic Drift is an old racing game that saw release on March 18th of 1994. However, over all the years, it has definitely aged quite a bit, and it's not a title that many people bring up nowadays. But that's changed thanks to Sonic Drift 16-bit. A demo of this remake came out during the 2023 Christmas Sage event, and this game does the same thing as the Triple Trouble remake. It brings all the assets and mechanics found in the original Game Gear title and brings it up to the standards of something you might find on the Sega Genesis. And just like the Triple Trouble remake, it achieves this effortlessly. Now yes, all we have at the moment is just a demo, but it is packed with a lot to mess with. You have 3 stages to race in, with a total of 7 characters to use. Those characters being Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Amy, Eggman, Metal Sonic, and Fang. And each of them sport their own unique abilities and skills. And all these characters feel just amazing to use. Their weights are awesome, being able to drift and boost with them is awesome. The controls in general just feel really responsive and snappy. The demo also has some banging remix tracks from the Game Gear original. And the sprite work here is just amazing and fits the Genesis style perfectly. Honestly, the best way to describe this remake without me gushing about it for 20 odd minutes is probably this. It effectively is the game that Sega could have made back in the 90s if they wanted an honest competitor to SNES's Mario Kart. And the fact that this demo looks and plays and feels just like something that Sega could have totally made back in the 90s is just jaw-droppingly awesome. Noah and his team have definitely outdone themselves with this demo, and I'm sure whatever they release next for this remake will be even better. And I honestly can't wait to play more of Sonic Drift 16-bit when more content gets added down the road, because I am sure it is going to be fantastic. Now, to follow that entry up, we have another up-and-coming 2D Sonic game, known as Sonic Galactic. Sonic Galactic is a 2D Sonic game that focuses on the idea of what if Sonic continued creating 2D experiences and improving on what was already created in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, specifically focusing on the idea of what if we had a 2D Sonic game on the Sega Saturn. Now, this is a game being created by Star Team, and it saw its latest demo release in 2020, but it is still in very much active development. The demo already shows a whole lot of promise, with a bunch of playable characters, each with their own abilities. Of course, you have the standard set of characters, Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, who all feel great, but you also have 2 others, like Fang the Sniper, who actually uses his gun for platforming, and my favorite one out of the bunch, Tunnel the Mole. This little guy has the ability to tunnel into any surface and ricochet all over the place, and playing with him is so unique and a whole lot of fun. And on top of that, the demo, as well as the screenshot shared on their Twitter, have some beautiful locales and set pieces for the stages. This has to be one of the most beautiful sprite Sonic games I have ever seen. And to add even more icing onto the cake, the music here is fantastic. And this team went above and beyond and got an entire comic made that actually tells the story leading up to Sonic Galactic, which is insane. The work that's been done here is beyond fantastic. And just like the other up-and-coming 2D Sonic titles that I've already said on this list, this is already on track to become another one of the top-tier Sonic fan games, and one that is an absolute must-play. And if you haven't already checked out the demo, then please do so and get introduced into the Sonic Galactic project. Trust me, it is definitely worth the look. Okay everyone, with our last entry focusing on the idea of what if a Sonic game was on the Sega Saturn, this next one actually poses the question of what if a Sonic game was released on the PlayStation 1. The game in question? Sonic Storm. Sonic Storm is a fan game being created by Electric Punk, and it is a speedrunner's dream. Now the game has had two different demos released for it, that being the dual story release and the test fire release, with both demos focusing on high-speed action and platforming. Now the test fire demo is the latest version, and it showcases Sonic running through a beautifully made little area where he can do all kinds of amazing tricks to maintain his speed. Now as far as controls and mechanics go, this game plays very, very sharp. Sonic is extremely responsive, and the better you are with this moveset, the more you can easily carry your speed and blast through these levels. The level layout and design themselves is also very well done, with there being a higher and a bottom path that will determine how fast you can clear the stages, with the higher path obviously being the better one. The main demo also shows a few alternative routes and has secrets to find all throughout it. And as far as the graphics and music are concerned, they are both phenomenal. The game is very, very striking and unique, with that old school PS1 aesthetic, with a really cool radical redesign of Sonic and Shadow. Now this game is still very much in active development, with them updating their social pages on the regular. And when comparing the latest demo to what they have now, it's clear that they've updated and changed a lot of things, and there's so much more to come. So if you're a fan of speedrunning and high-velocity gameplay, and you want to see a radical new take on Sonic the Hedgehog, then you should give Sonic Storm a look, because I'm sure you'll have a blast with it. Alright, we're jumping over to 2D Sonic fan games again, and this one's called Sonic Overture. Sonic Overture is a fan-made prequel to the very first Sonic the Hedgehog, specifically focusing on Sonic's adventures on Christmas Island, which is actually where Sonic was born. And it was inspired by 32-bit games during the Saturn era. So it effectively is a Sega Saturn-style 2D Sonic game, which is, of course, awesome. Now this game is being created by the Overture team, and its latest release was on December of 2023. And the demo showcases two full-blown zones with two unique boss fights, with the second boss fight featuring Sonic chasing off against Eggman in a 3D-like area. It's really well done. The stage design is really vast with lots of areas to go, and the mechanics found in the stages are all very creative. This is just a very fun game to run through. The music is also really good, being extremely catchy and energetic, and the overall animations and sprite work here is just wow, just really, really good. The mechanics and feel of Sonic is on point, and the game looks beautiful. And it also features a lot of scrapped ideas and concepts from the original Sonic 1. Like how Eggman was originally going to be wearing pajamas, as well as the original version of Sonic, who used to be a bunny. There's also a few additional cool mechanics in Sonic Overture, like Sonic having the ability to perch on certain objects in order to jump off them. There's also this cool link/combo system, where it keeps track of how many item boxes and or enemies you jump off of or take out, which is pretty cool. In summary, Sonic Overture 95 is another beautiful 2D Sonic game, and the Overture team has done some phenomenal work with this game, with Sonic feeling as good as he does, with how stunning the game looks and sounds, and with how cool the bosses are. I honestly can't wait to see what else is in store for Sonic Overture 95. And whatever does come, I am sure it is going to be absolutely amazing. Alright, next up we have a fan game that's actually based off of Sonic Frontiers. A fan game called Sonic Horizons. Now this is a fan game being created by Strix, and it saw its latest release on July 12th of 2023. And it effectively is, well, Sonic Frontiers. You have a massive area to run around and explore, collectibles that you can get, secrets you can find, and cyberspace stages that you can run through. It also has a fairly well-animated opening cutscene, with hints at a far larger story that we don't get too much info on, at least not in the demo. Sonic Horizons does also feature an array of beautiful tracks. When in the main area of the game, where you go and explore all over the place, it has a beautiful ambient track in the background that keeps you immersed. And when entering cyberspace stages, the music picks up in intensity and is far more exciting. Speaking of cyberspace stages, the ones that are here in Sonic Horizons are very well constructed. Honestly, probably better constructed than what's found in Sonic Frontiers. Not only are the levels far more vast with multiple paths you can take, but they also offer a fair amount of challenge, and if you're good with Sonic's moveset, you can blaze through these stages. And as far as the construction and design of the main overworld is concerned, it also is a fairly good improvement over the original Sonic Frontiers. It may not be as large as some of the islands found in Frontiers, but with the way you're able to run across treetops and climb old broken down buildings and structures, it just feels more natural than what we got in Frontiers. Now, of course, as beautiful and as well constructed as this world is, it wouldn't be fun if Sonic didn't control well. which he does, like, extremely well. Sonic's physics and weight are far better in Horizons than they ever were in Frontiers. And on top of that, Sonic has a slew of abilities. Not only can he use the signature spin dash, but he also has the ability to do the air dash, homing attack, and is also equipped with some new abilities like the wall run, which feels very natural to use. And it also makes traversing this beautiful landscape that much more fun. You also have the ability to use the environment around you to your advantage, similar to how Green Hill Paradise Act 2 was. You can use terrain that's a bit of an incline to launch yourself high up in the air, or use steep slopes in order to gain a high amount of speed. It just feels so good to play with Sonic's abilities and his momentum in this game. It's insane. It feels like the whole world is like your own sandbox. Sonic's controls are also smooth and responsive. I never once felt like I didn't have control of the character at all times, and if I ever made a mistake, I felt like it was my fault, not the game's. That's not to mention how absolutely gorgeous this game looks. Between its awesome sound design and the effective reuse of Sonic Frontiers' sound effects, along with the ambient soundtrack, it just comes all together to create this almost mystic and mysterious-like feel for the game. It just makes me want to explore more and learn more about the secrets on this island. I just love it to death. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the fact that this game does have voice acting. Not a whole bunch of it, the only character we hear is Sonic, but so far it sounds really on point. But what's probably the most notable about Sonic Horizons is the fact that this is still an early demo, and the game is still in active development. And yet, what we have here is not only impressive, it's just downright remarkable. In summary, the work that Strix and his team have done here in Sonic Horizons is just marvelous. And if this high quality work continues, then I honestly believe that Sonic Horizons could become a real solid contender for being one of the best open zone Sonic games. Okay, we're getting towards the end of this list. There's only a handful more, and the next entry up is Sonic 4 Reimagined. Sonic 4 Reimagined is exactly what you'd expect it to be. It's a reimagined version of Sonic 4, but this time in a 2D pixel art style, and it is beautiful! This game is being created by Sir Palama, and it saw its latest demo release on January 3rd of 2024. Now, for those that don't know, Sonic 4 Episode 1 was a bit of a cash grab that saw release on October 7th of 2010. That was supposed to be the continuation of the amazing classic titles from Sonic 1, CD, 2, and 3 and Knuckles. And so it was called Sonic 4, but it nowhere close met those expectations. And so it was met with mixed reviews, and to this day, most people count it as either bad or mediocre. But that's where this amazing reimagining of Sonic 4 comes into play by Sir Palama. Not only does it make the game look 1,000 times better, but it makes it play like a dream. Sonic feels fantastic to control, and the actual stage design and layout is really well done. This game also has a very unique mechanic where Sonic can actually switch his abilities on the fly, between the homing attack and the air dash. Also, the demo features a fully unique boss fight that is leagues better than what we got in the original Sonic 4 Episode 1. And it offers up a fairly decent challenge, and it's just a fun fight in general. As a whole, Sonic 4 Episode 1 Reimagined is an energetic, fast, and beautiful experience. This is the game that we should have gotten from Sega when they first announced Sonic 4, hands down. And if you ever wanted to see what Sonic 4's true potential was, well, this is the game to play. And I so hope to see this game fully released, because for me, I actually always kind of liked Sonic 4 when I was growing up, and though now I'm older and I know the game isn't all that good, it would still be nice to see Sonic 4 get the full reimagined treatment and blossom into an experience that is worth playing and worth being called, well, Sonic 4. So please, 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 give Sonic 4 Episode 1 Reimagined the love that it definitely deserves, because the work here is just extraordinary. Next up is a fan game that not only has a pretty good skill ceiling with lots to learn, but a game that Sonic Rush and advanced players will enjoy, known as Sonic Momentum. Sonic Momentum is a Sonic Advance style fan game that has been created by Mr. Bane that actually saw its latest 4.0 beta release in January of 2024. Now this fan game right off the bat is pretty technical, and Sonic has a variety of different moves at his disposal that can all be used to traverse the stages found in the demo in many different ways. However, with all these added abilities and mechanics, it creates a pretty high skill ceiling. Now this game pretty much features, well, momentum-based gameplay, where you use the terrain around you in order to increase your speed, along with using your character's different abilities and tricks to maintain that speed and consistently keep a good flow. The stages themselves are very fast and fluent and have a general great vibe and design work about them. And as far as the general UI and look of the game, it is absolutely stellar. The sprite work and animations is top notch, the backgrounds look absolutely amazing, and the effects showcased here and the lighting, it just all comes together here in Sonic Momentum, giving it a really high quality look. The game also has this really dynamic camera system, where as you're running through the stages, the camera will zoom in and zoom out, and it helps create and maintain that sense of speed. It's a very good addition. And as far as gameplay is concerned, Sonic feels great to use, but as I already mentioned previously, he has a wider range of abilities, and using the right ability at the right time will make the difference in getting a good rank or a bad rank. And speaking of ranks, the game has a fairly in-depth ranking system, where instead of just having a singular letter rank, this time you actually have two different ranks, one related to your time and another related to your ring count. And both of these ranks will be taken into account to actually grade how well you did in a stage. And this is showcased by getting different medals, from bronze all the way up to diamond. Now these two ranks are actually dependent on two things, that being your time and your ring count. And in order to achieve a double S rank and require a diamond medal is going to take some serious legwork, because not only do you have to clear this massive stage in about 1 minute and 30 seconds, but on top of that you have to collect and hold on to 150 rings all the way to the end of the stage. And doing these two things together is easier said than done. Now, between all these additional mechanics, the ranking system, and the additional movesets of Sonic, you're gonna have to spend quite a bit of time in order to get good at this game, and you're gonna probably have to practice if you want to get a high rank. But if you do take the time to learn the stages and the movesets of your character, then you can blaze through these stages, and it's very rewarding once you do finally reach that point. Mr. Bane has made something truly special here, and I honestly can't wait to see what else is in the future for this absolutely extraordinary fan game. Alright everyone, next up is actually another fan remake of an old Game Gear title, known as Sonic Blast Next. Sonic Blast Next is being created by Sharp, the same user that actually created the Sonic Speed course, which we talked about a little earlier. Now this game sets out to remake another old Game Gear title known as Sonic Blast that released in 1996. And for those that don't know, Sonic Blast was a weird attempt at creating pre-rendered 3D graphics, but it did so to pretty poor effect. And overall, Sonic Blast is a pretty okay game at best, and somewhat unfun at worst. It's definitely a game that has not aged well over all these years, so a remake just makes sense. Sonic Blast Next is a massive overhaul graphically and gameplay-wise versus the Game Gear original. Not only does it feature a general style and graphical feel as something you'd find in a Yoshi game, but the game feels really well made, with a drop dash and everything. You also have the added ability to play with Knuckles, who has a signature glide and all. The game also features a boss fight towards the end, and the stage layout is pretty well done, though it is fairly short. Now the demo we have is very impressive. It's not all that long, but it showcases some serious potential in this really cool, highly stylized remake of Sonic Blast. And it definitely is one of the more visually striking games that I've ever seen. Now again, this demo is pretty short, and it's obvious that development has just begun on this fantastic game, so we're gonna have to probably wait a bit till we see more on Sonic Blast Next. But with how incredible that the demo that we already have is, I'm certain that Sonic Blast Next has an extremely bright future, and I can't wait to see what else is in store for this awesome little game. Alright, our next entry is a very interesting one, as it's actually a fan game that's setting out to revive an old cancelled Sonic title. This is a project known originally as Project 32X, but is now called Sonic Micro Mobius. Sonic Micro Mobius is a game being created by Retro Dev that saw its latest release on January 10th of 2024. In this title, Dr. Evil Robotic is trying to take over an entire VR world known as Micro Mobius, and while he's doing so, he actually ends up capturing all of Sonic's friends. And now it's Sonic's job to jump into the VR world to save all of his buddies and stop the Mad Doctor's plans before he can reformat Micro Mobius. The setup is actually really cool, and it's pretty much one-to-one with the original pitch of Sonic 32X. Now, graphically speaking, this game is being designed in the mindset of creating a Sonic game for the Sega 32X, a 32-bit add-on that was created for the Sega Genesis that did have the ability to create 3D graphics. So in order to replicate that, Sonic Micro Mobius features these awesome-looking primitive 3D graphics, and they're pretty spot on for something that you would see on the 32X. Now, the way that the game is structured is more of a platform/exploration-based game. It's far less fast-paced than a normal Sonic game would be, and I think it actually works well with how the game is designed. Also, Sonic himself does play and control a little bit slower, which definitely helps replicate the whole idea and feel of a more primitive 3D game. Now, the demo that we have actually showcases 4 different zones to play through, each of them with their own unique identity and theme. And the music is fairly good as well, not something you'd find in a traditional Sonic game, but good nonetheless. The game is still in active development, and it's planned to add a whole lot more zones and in-game cutscenes, which is pretty exciting. And as it stands, I think Project 32X/Sonic Micro Mobius does have a lot of really cool potential, and it gives us a really cool look at what Sonic could have been like on the Sega 32X if he did get that 3D title. So if you're interested in taking a look at a far more unique and different take on Sonic the Hedgehog, as well as taking a look at an awesome fan project that's reviving an old canceled game, then Sonic Micro Mobius is definitely worth a look. And I think what's here is very impressive and has a whole lot of potential to revive a very old and lost project. Next up, we got another 2D Sonic fan game that has a whole lot of promise. And that game is called Sonic Oral. Sonic Oral is a fan game being created by Darkin and their team, and it's on its latest release on October 10th of 2023. Now this title is a fan game that not only uses the classic trilogy of games along with Knuckles Chaotix's inspiration, but it does those games way better. Sonic Oral is one of the prettiest sprite-based Sonic games I have ever had the pleasure of laying my eyes on. The sprite work and backgrounds and animations are all so highly detailed, with a great use of an array of vivid colors. The game plays and feels like an absolute dream, with Sonic feeling just like the original titles, with the drop dash and spin dash being in its arsenal, and the level design is fantastic as well. Not only is it very vast, with plenty of alternative paths to take, but thanks to Sonic's momentum and general feel, as well as the insane flow of these stages, you can keep some insane speed throughout each zone, and it feels amazing. And with how massive these zones are, there is plenty of places to explore. The music is also a total banger, with each track having a high energy pop-like beat to it, and the demo does have a unique boss towards the end, which is a blast to fight. From start to finish, I was in awe playing Sonic Oral, and this could very well become one of my favorite 2D Sonic fan games of all time if development stays as high quality as this. The story is also pretty interesting. Following the events of Knuckles Chaotix, Dr. Eggman sets out to harness the power found on the mysterious Easter Island, and creates a brand new base with a satellite dish in order to brainwash anyone who so wishes. And now it's your job to put a stop to the Mad Doctor's newest plan. The story here is pretty solid, and the fact that it continues after the events of Knuckles Chaotix is also a really nice touch. Now, as it currently stands, as a full package, Sonic Oral is just jaw-dropping. The music, the graphics, the controls, and the level design, it's all perfection. And I so badly want development to continue on this marvelous title. And even if this demo is rather short, being able to be completed within about 5 minutes or so, what's here is so impactful. And the fact that Darkin and their team was able to create such a fantastic experience in such a short runtime to make such a high impact is just insane to me. So if you're wanting to play the start of what possibly could be one of the best Sonic fan games ever made, then trust me, you are definitely going to want to check out Sonic Oral. Alright, our next entry is a modern-style 2D Sonic game known as Sonic Essence. This is a title that saw release in 2023 from Team Redream, and it is one heck of a fan game. The story behind this title is that it takes place after the events of Sonic Unleashed, where the Mad Mustache Doctor has found a new ultimate power source, known as the Soul Sapphire. And Eggman plans to use this new ultimate power source on the Chaos Emeralds in order to destroy them and take all of their power for himself. So just like always, Sonic sets off to put an end to this new scheme by collecting all the Chaos Emeralds before the Doctor can get to them. The story here is rather interesting, especially with the concept of an artifact that can actually destroy the Chaos Emeralds, and I'm really curious where the story might go when the game is fully released. Now, as far as the game itself is concerned, first off, the sprite work here is wonderfully done. The areas and the backgrounds are all highly detailed, with amazing animations. It looks just like the way I would imagine Sonic Unleashed looking like if it was put into a 2D title. Gameplay-wise, it's very snappy, and Sonic feels great to use, and he has most of his signature abilities, like the spin dash, homing attack, and more, but with the added addition of wall kicking, which feels great to use. Also, Sonic Essence's levels are all very well constructed, with each act offering several different paths you can actually take. And the demo even has a ranking system to encourage you to play as good as you can. The demo also comes with a time attack mode, which, I'm not gonna lie, I spent a little too much time in when I was supposed to be grabbing footage, but it was just that fun to play through, trying to get as good of a time as possible. The music here is all really high energy and fits the themes of the stage as well, and the sound effects are all fairly solid. In summary, this fan game is another top-class 2D title that might not have a super long runtime as of yet, but shows a Master Emerald's worth of promise. and only time will tell what else might be in store for Sonic Essence. Now, to follow up our last entry, we have another high-octane, high-speed fan game called Sonic vs. Darkness True Nightmare Revived. Sonic vs. Darkness True Nightmare Revived, or as I will be calling it going forward, Sonic vs. Darkness, is a game being created by Neko, and it seeks to combine elements found in Sonic Rush, Advance, and Sonic Unleashed, all while remaking Neko's older 2011 version of Sonic vs. Darkness. And it currently has 2 demos showcasing a lot of what this action-packed adventure has to offer. Across both demos, the sprite work is just stunning, faithfully capturing the same look of the advanced titles, with vibrant animations and detailed backgrounds, but with an assortment of flashy effects, and all of it's accompanied with a rocking soundtrack. Now, when looking at gameplay, we have 2 playable characters, that being Sonic and Shadow, who both have extremely precise controls and weights, which provide the player a very fluid experience. However, in the first demo, there's actually no difference between either character, they play pretty much exactly the same. But even if that's the case, with the physics found in this title, these 2 can burn through levels with proper reaction and memorization, and even if you don't know the stages super well, you'll have a great time regardless. Oh, and speaking of the stages, the level design is also a highlight. Each stage features several different pathways you can take, all while featuring beautiful set pieces. And the general flow of these stages is so high-paced that you'll never once feel like you lose a sense of speed. There's also a ranking system found in this title, which will entice you to play better and better in order to snag that ever-elusive S rank. Now, the second demo we have for Sonic vs. Darkness is pretty different than the first, as it mainly focuses on combat, with Shadow being our only playable character. Now, the combat found in this demo has actually been inspired off of several things, like the Werehog stages in Sonic Unleashed, as well as Dragon Ball FighterZ. And this demo offers 4 different missions to play through and a training room for players to try and master Shadow's fighting style. Between both demos, Sonic vs. Darkness shows incredible promise. The high energy feel of the levels, the fantastic controls of the characters, the gorgeous sprite work, it all comes together to make one of the most enjoyable Rush-like experiences I have ever played through. Neko has made quite the experience in Sonic vs. Darkness, and for anyone looking for a fast-paced playthrough that will offer a fun challenge, then hopping into this adventure will definitely be a good choice. And personally, I really hope that this stellar title reaches full completion, so we get to see the full envisioning that Neko has for Sonic vs. Darkness. Well everyone, we're back with another classic Sonic styled fan game, known as Sonic Quantum Collision. This game had a demo released during Sage of 2020, and it's being developed by Ethereal Speed and their team. Now yes, this is another top-class 2D Sonic experience, which I'm sure you all expected at this point. But this one is doing something really special. Sonic Quantum Collision is an attempt to bridge the gap between the classic and modern titles, in a way that other Sega official games, like Sonic 4, just couldn't. The game also hits us right at the start with a very unique sprite style, with the environment having a multi-perspective aspect to them, pretty much like a 2.5D experience. And Sonic and other objects also have this cool shadow effect that helps strengthen this perspective playing vibe, and it makes this fan game really stand out. The detail in the animations and the backgrounds is truly stunning, and the music that accompanies the levels in the demo have a catchy bop-like feel to them that really establish the uniqueness of Sonic Quantum Collision. Now, gameplay is also fairly interesting. Sonic's weight and physics are on point, and our Blue Boy has a signature spin dash along with the drop dash. But what's really interesting is that the flow of the entire game is still fast, but floaty. This creates a more relaxed pace in the gameplay, which I actually found rather enjoyable. The stage also is vast with plenty of different pathways you can explore, and there are even big rings that you can find which will lead you to special stages, which offer a fun little challenge. The current demo also has 2 unique bosses, each of which are really fun to fight, and they're not all too challenging. But what's really cool is that as they take damage throughout the fight, they'll become more and more damaged, which is such a cool detail. The demo also has a few other additional features that we don't get too much time to mess with, but are still great to have. For example, towards the start, you're actually placed in what looks like to be a hub world that might be used in larger effect when the full game releases, if the hub world is kept in, that is. And there's also in-game cutscenes to help transition players into other stages, which is an awesome addition. And on a bit of a side note, the art in general for Sonic Quantum Collision is just fantastic. I love the new designs of all the characters in this art style, and I especially love the new look for Metal Sonic. He looks so menacing, I adore it. Now, at this point, you might be asking yourself, have we gotten any more recent updates on Sonic Quantum Collision, or is the 2020 demo all that we really have? Well, thankfully, the team working on Sonic Quantum Collision actually released a video update on January 28th of 2024. And this video actually showcases the brand new updated look of Sonic Quantum Collision. In this update, we actually see that Sonic's rocking a brand new sprite. And along with this, the actual level itself looks like it's more leaning into the full 2.5D style, with Sonic being able to move in and out of the background, which is really cool. In summary, this is definitely one of the coolest fan games out there that's got a one-of-a-kind identity and feel. And if you guys haven't tried it out just yet, or you never even heard of it, then I would highly encourage you to take the time to experience Sonic Quantum Collision, because this truly is something special. And I personally can't wait to see more in this project and see what else they're going to bring into this title in order to bridge the gap between the classics and the modern games. Oh boy, we finally made it to one of the most stylized and energetic games I have ever seen. And that game being Sonic & Knuckles Neutrogic Panic. This title right here, this fan title, is insane. And there is so much to go through for it. So let's start at the beginning and look at the first ever demo where it all started. The first demo was released and created by Tay and their team back during Sage of 2019. Now, this very first demo had some beautiful sprite work, incredible music, and solid gameplay. The level design was very open with tons of cool gimmicks, but the biggest thing was the fact that the level in the demo had 2 bosses per act, with a total of 4 unique bosses that all offered up a serious challenge. And all these bosses featured extremely creative designs and beautiful sprite work and animations. And the game as a whole felt like a cool combination between normal Sonic level design and a Sonic boss rush, which was just really cool. Now here's the thing, this demo from 2019 is really fun. It's great to play through, the bosses are awesome, it looks great, it plays great, it is an incredible time. But it is entirely outdated. This game has made some serious changes since 2019, and the current version of this game, the way it looks now, is of a way higher caliber. This updated and improved version of Neutrogic has been teased since 2020 on their Twitter, but it wouldn't be until 2022 till we got a full-blown glimpse into the total glory of this title, when a video showcase of the first level got released onto their YouTube page. And holy hedgehogs, it is superb! From effects, to the music, to the gameplay, this is just something else! Sonic along with Knuckles both spart radically sharp new designs, and the game's look and feel is just look at it! The backgrounds, the colors, the animations, the UI, I have never seen another game with such raw style! And as far as the gameplay goes, Sonic doesn't just burn through stages now, he straight up scorches them! Now he's able to do this because he sports a brand new version of the drop dash that is far more powerful than anything that we've seen before, called the Charge Drop Dash. And this thing is amazing, especially when used properly. You also can enter into what's called a Super Rush, which is like Speed Shoes but cranked way up. And this has to be one of the coolest temporary buffs ever. And as far as the level layouts go, they all seem to be able to keep a great amount of flow and speed to them. And the bosses that you face off against, just wow! They are far more energetic than anything I have ever seen in any mainline Sonic game. And they have some amazing and super creative designs and attacks. And the general idea and theme of the game is still the same as the original 2019 version, combining Sonic-style level progression and traversal along with boss rushes. Now for the astute among you, you might be very quick to point out the fact that we've only had video showcases of this new and improved version of Neutrogic, and we've never actually had a demo to where we can play and experience the new feel and version of the game. So you might be wondering why or how I even have a basis for how this game is going to feel or play like. Well, let me introduce you to the Sonic mod for Sonic 3 Air. This is a mod for the fan remastered version of Sonic 3 and Knuckles that not only adds mechanics and stylistic effects from Neutrogic Panic into the game, but it also transforms Sonic's sprite, physics, and abilities into the same version of Sonic found in the Neutrogic fan game as well. Because of this, Sonic feels better than ever to use, and now comes equipped with the amazing Charge Drop Dash, allowing you to fly through these zones. You can also find big rings that will let you now enter into Super Rush, which greatly increases your speed. And these additions, along with the stylistic change, completely transforms the way you experience the original Sonic 3 and Knuckles. turning it into a speedrunning, boss-crushing playthrough. That's not to mention the fact that the mod adds in a custom boss from the fan game as well that replaces a rather dull fight found in Flying Battery. Now, for anyone that's worried that this mod is not accurate to the fan game, well, don't be. This is actually endorsed by the Neutrojic Panic team, who helped make it as accurate as possible, which effectively makes us the closest thing that we have to a full-blown demo of the new and improved version of Neutrojic. With all that said, Sonic & Knuckles Neutrojic Panic is shaping up to be a truly spectacular fan game, and though it might be a bit before it fully releases, I'm sure it'll be more than worth the wait. And thanks to the Sonic mod, at least we have something to keep us busy and practice with until that fateful day finally comes. We're back again with another toony Sonic fan game, but one that actually takes gameplay found in Mario Maker and applies it to Sonic. And this is a game known as Sonic Studio. Sonic Studio is a title being developed by Lapper Dev and their team, and it effectively is the Sonic Mario Maker fan game. Now, at the moment, we don't really have any public demos that have been released for us to mess with, but we do have a ton of info on its development. And in fact, we even got an update on November 5th of 2023. So with there being so much info on the project, I really wanted to include it here on the list because what's been achieved in Sonic Studio is truly astonishing. Now, with all that said, Sonic Studios is a fan game where you can create your own levels, with the ability to place an assortment of different tiles while having different themes, like Green Hill, Spring Yard, and Marble Zone, just as a few examples. You also have several characters that you'll be able to use, like Tails, Knuckles, and Sonic, all of which can be used instantly, allowing you to test the level in real time, which is amazing. And all the characters and in-game physics are pretty much one-to-one with the Genesis originals, meaning that you'll be able to pick up speed going down hills, going through loop-de-loops, launching yourself off ramps, the works. And with the ability to pretty much make whatever stage you want, you can truly play with these physics to your heart's content. On top of that, the sprite work, graphics, and backgrounds have marvelous detail and coloring, and the UI is extremely simple and clean and easy to understand. And when looking at level creation specifically, there are so many options. From creating loops, to editing the terrain, to placing obstacles, to adding decorations, to placing enemies. The amount that you can do here is insane. Now yes, this game is still in active development, and it's probably going to be a bit before we either see a demo, let alone the full release. But the future of this title is extremely bright. I mean, it is highly likely that there can be a long-lasting and thriving community around Sonic Studio, where players are able to share their creations and their ideas, where people can play with the physics of the characters, creating some of the most unique and out-of-the-box levels that you can imagine. Or Sonic Studio could be used in a different application, allowing future devs to learn the basis of level creation, or use Sonic Studio as a basis to test their own level ideas for their own fan games. The truth is, Sonic Studio could very well create an entire community that could rival that of Nintendo's Mario Maker, and most likely outlast it. And the fact that a fan game has that much potential is just utterly impressive. The TLDR is this: everyone that's worked on the Sonic Studio project has done a phenomenal job. And so far, this fan game looks like it's going to nail the concept of a Sonic level maker. And if that does happen, it could very well open the door to future developers and or inspire the creativity of players all around the world. And I can't wait for when that day finally arrives. Alrighty, we have finally made it to our last entry on this gigantic, packed list. And the final one to send us off is the up-and-coming Sonic in the Fallen Star sequel, known as Sonic Moon Facility. Yup, that is correct! There is a sequel being made to one of my favorite fan games of all time, and it's currently in active development, and we've already gotten a handful of sneak peeks, and I sure as heck was going to include it in this list. Sonic and the Moon Facility is a game being created by Stardrop and their team, and though I said it's a sequel to Fallen Star, that's not quite right. The story isn't a direct sequel, but it does take a lot and will be similar to Fallen Star. With that said, this game seeks to improve over the elements and mechanics found and established in the original Fallen Star, by adding more consistent difficulty, adding 8 new zones, collectibles to find during exploration, the works. Now, they haven't revealed a whole lot on Moon Facility just yet, but we do know a few things for certain. First off, based on what we've seen, this game is going to play and feel just as good as the original Fallen Star. Secondly, the game's graphics and sprite work is just as good as the original, if not better. They're also planning on making a total of 8 main zones, but they haven't revealed how many extra levels there might be, or special stages, or anything of that nature. They're also keeping a few other things under wraps, like the story, which at the moment we know nothing about. But what we do know, based on the title alone, is that this fan game is going to deal with, well, some kind of moon facility. And based on the trailer and some of the screenshots that we've gotten at this point, there might be some ancient or mysterious technology involved. So I'm really curious what they're planning to do for the story. It seems like it's going to be really interesting. We've also gotten teases at custom cutscenes making a return from the original Sonic and the Fallen Star. And from the bit that we've seen, they already look amazing. Now I know, the game's not even out yet, and I'm already giving it a crap load of high praise and hype. But the thing is that Stardrop and their team has done such an amazing job with the original Sonic and the Fallen Star that I, honest to God, have no worry that Moon Facility will be just as good, if not better. And I can't wait to see what else Stardrop and their team might have in store for Sonic and the Moon Facility. And that finally brings us to the end of the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. And oh boy, what a collection it was. It's insane to see the amount of dedication and love and passion that these people put into these projects. And it's crazy that there are so many fan games that are up to par, if not better, than Sega official titles. And the best part is, I barely scratched the surface here. There are still many other games out there right now that I didn't even get a chance to include on the list. A great example of this is a game known as Sonic Advance X that is still being regularly updated, that features a slew of characters and beautiful 3D environments with a very awesome style, pretty much bringing the Sonic Advance feel into a 3D space. It's a very cool project. And again, that's just one example out of many, many more. Now, of course, like I do at the end of all these deep dives, I do have a surprise for those that stayed all the way to the end. Like I normally do, all these fan games will be compiled into a massive master list that is called, well, the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. You can find that down in the description below, and it'll have all the games featured on this list there as well, divided up by the segments that they were featured in. So if you want to check out some of these fan games for yourself, go ahead and head on down there and show these amazing developers some love and support, because they more than deserve it, especially since a lot of these games pretty much rival Sega official titles, and that's just amazing. But with all that said, that does finally bring us to the end of this video. Thank you so much for joining me with the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. This is a project that I've been working on for quite some time, and I'm really proud of how it came out, and I hope you enjoyed. And what do you guys think? Are you excited for some of these fan games? Are there fan games that I didn't mention that you wish were part of the list? Are there fan games that you're disappointed that didn't come out? Or do you think that some of them will make a revival? I'm curious what you have to say down below. And with all that in mind, guys, if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment, because your support, as always, well, have it amazing. And again, thank you so much for joining me with the Sonic Mega Fan Collection. Without further ado, Justin signing out. I'll see you on the next one. Later!